Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly conversation where we talk all things Star Trek. And today we are going to be talking about the top 10 worst couples in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now, to be fair, there are a lot more than 10. Let's just be real. There's a lot more than 10. So we're going to be going over 10 and a couple of honorable mentions. But before we get started, I want to invite a special guest today. She is the co-host of the TNG podcast, a Star Trek show. Her name is Andrea, and I want to welcome her to the stage.
Hi, Cherise. I'm so excited to be here. Oh my God. Let's talk about it.
Yes. Hello, Andrea. So Andrea is one of my real life best friends, but also the co-host of the TNG podcast, which we both did together for 2.5, 3 years. You can find it wherever podcasts are found. Highly recommend it, especially if you like today's conversation. You're going to want more. Not that you're going to agree with us. You're just going to enjoy it. That's my promise. Okay. And Andrea, I think you can see the chat, right?
I sure can.
Okay.
I love that right away. Windgrace says Ronan doesn't stand a ghost of a chance. You're right.
I think Windgrace, let me know if I'm wrong, but Windgrace, I think you were the one who said on one of my videos, you said something like turning into a giant spider and like being surgically altered and something else would be life-changing for a regular person, but if you're in Starfleet, it's just a Tuesday. Yeah. I think that was you who said that. And I was like, that's hilarious.
Right? And it's also not discussed next week. Like, we're on to a new thing, like a proton star is about to explode and kill us all. Whatever. Yeah.
Moving on. Yeah. All right. So let's go. Hello, everybody joining live. Hello, everybody joining on the replay. If you're on the replay, type #replay in the comments so that I know you were here. Let's get started with today's list, starting with episode 10. And this comes from season 2, episode 18, and it is called Up the Long Ladder. Yeah. And the first couple on the list is Riker and Brenna Odell. So if you have not seen this episode recently or ever, I'm going to say give it a skip. It's trash. It's not a good one. But just to give you a recap about the episode, there was this colony named, there was this colony from Earth of, sorry, hold on a second. Andrea, I can hear you typing.
Super sorry.
No, I want you to type. Get in the comments.
Okay, I wanted to, yeah, okay, thank you, because I'm like responding to, sorry.
This is like,
mute yourself, okay.
I'm totally getting flashbacks to like distance learning. Andrea and I were both teachers at the same middle school at the same time. And like, this gives me flashbacks where you're just hearing like, and you're like, Bobby. Go into your breakout room, Bobby. Anyways, okay, sorry. Giving you an overview. So you can mute if you want to chat, but I love you being in the comments. So that way, nobody's being ignored. Okay, so the name of the ship was the Mariposa, the USS Mariposa, I suppose. And the ship left from Earth hundreds of years ago. And I don't remember why. Maybe they were separatists or something. But they left hundreds of years ago. And then there was like some infighting with the people on the ship. And they split up their group. Half of the people went to this one planet where they said they want to go away from technology and be more agrarian, go back to a simple life and be farmers and stuff like that. The other half were like, I guess, all of the scientists and things like that. And they wanted more technology and all of that. So they went to a different planet. And apparently their ship crashed. And only 5 people survived on that whole half. So on the agrarian side, they were multiplying like crazy. They have all kinds of kids and pigs and dogs and everything else. But the problem is, the way the episode starts is there's some kind of solar flare or something that destroys their home. And so they send out a distress call and the Enterprise comes against them. And then they're like, oh, there's another half of us. And they go find the other people. And the other people, their problem is that because they've been using clones for hundreds of years, they've just been cloning these 5 people over and over and over. They're running out of genetic diversity. They're having some kind of genetic degradation where they're going to basically be wiped out in a matter of like 2 or 3 generations. So the solution, of course, is just to combine the two. The two that split up, just make them one big happy family again. All is well. Now, during this episode, Riker hooks up with the daughter of the Agrarian Society's leader, and her name's Brenna. And it's kind of like a modern day retelling, I guess, of a combination of Taming of the Shrew with Old MacDonald Had a Farm. That's kind of what they're going for here. And Riker and Brenna hook up.
Hold on.
Am I wrong?
I'm sorry, Old MacDonald?
That's what I think of when I think of this episode.
It is. I mean,
It's
when
like-
they beam to the ship, the hay comes with them. Like, so you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Who beams hay? Who beams hay?
Right.
Like, I mean, I guess if you
Like
have
if
the
I'm
animals,
standing
you
on
have
a
to also
rock,
have the
you're
hay,
not going to
but
beam me
the
and the
dirt and the
rock.
rock.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Anyways, so they hook up, and this couple is just, it's weird to me. I don't know. Andrea, thoughts about this first couple?
Yes. I mean, you know what? I will say this. Riker loves strong women. He does. He loves strong people, right? Because there's the androgynous person that he was drawn to, right, in like another episode. But for the most part, he really loves strong women. And Brenna Odell is the strongest effing woman out there. Okay. Like she is not having it. Even her father lives in fear of her, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, you know what? It just feels very early seasons where like she's like, but your girl's got to wash her feet or whatever she says. And he's like, I'll wash your feet for you, baby. Right. And it's like, it just, the whole thing just felt like, it felt like Gene Roddenberry just had too many hands in that storyline. I felt like with the like creepy overtone. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, strong woman check. Match, I would say no. But I guess the question is, how do you want to define a couple? Is it like a great fling, like a hot, sexy fling? Because there's a lot of those, but it's like they would never actually like make it as a couple in real life. I don't know. That's my question.
Yeah. So actually, that's a really good point, and that's something I was going to say in the intro, but did not write down and therefore forgot. Okay, so how do we define couple? I don't know, because we've got the long-term couple, right? We've got like the Troy, Riker, Picard, Beverly, whatever the F that is, right? Then we've got like just a one-night stand, which is what this is. This is clearly like nobody was trying to make a long-term connection from this, right? So and then the other thing I will say is that I took off the board immediately all cases where Counselor Troy was assaulted. We're not going to call those couples.
That's not a relationship.
That's not a relationship.
That's an assault.
That's like 10 or 12 couples that were already off the list. So I guess this list is a little combination of all three. Some of the people on the list are just flings, you know, whether good or for ill. Some of them are people who actually dated, like they were together more than once. And I don't know if any of them were longer term, but I think those are it's between fling and like all the way up to girlfriend. So fling, dating, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. I think that's where I encapsulated the list of 10. That's a really hard question. And when I was coming up with the list, I had so many, like if you just count hookups alone, there was like 60 things on my page.
Yeah, seriously. And those are the ones we can remember. You know what I mean?
And most of those were not great. So they could have all been on the list.
Okay. We'll have that on the side somewhere at some point.
Right. And so here's the thing about saying Brenna's really strong. Is she strong or is she just overbearing and rude?
That's what option 2. She's like, package B. She's just really, yes, she's people sometimes confuse like kindness for weakness, and they sometimes confuse overbearing for strength. And I don't necessarily think it's a strength. I think it's a defense mechanism, and she's incredibly defensive. And I would be too if my father was a hot mess who was constantly drunk and like sloppy and making a mess of the town. Like I would also be irritated by that.
Trying to milk the cows or whatever.
Right. And help midwife so-and-so through their pregnancy and all that other crap. She's like running the village, right? Like, so she's just she's perpetually like flabbergasted, right? She's just like, I can't believe I have to do this other thing too, right? In addition to all these other things I have to do. So yeah, I think overbearing, not so much strong.
For good reason, is what you're saying. Yeah, not out of the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, I'm going to hop into the comments and then we're going to go to couple number 9.
Okay.
Okay, Nadia says, "Old McDonald, I'm dying." Yeah. Nadia also says, "I freaking love Brenna." So yay for somebody loving Brenna. I think if we were like if I met Brenna in 10 Forward, I'd be like, "All right, girl." I think I'd be like, "All right, we did one shot. That's good. That's good."
And it was synthahol too, so I don't even have to have a hangover.
Yeah, that's probably the only alcohol I would drink.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, because I probably wouldn't like that either. So Wolfkinder 3 says, on the Irish people.
Oh my God.
Episode. Yeah, it was the Irish people episode. I wouldn't want to be cloned, but I think it's funny that they were so against being cloned, but they potentially leave mixed species babies all over the place. Oh, that's a good point. So in this episode, I did a little deep dive into all these episodes because, as you can imagine, I don't rewatch them ever. So I didn't remember what some of the details in this episode, which maybe I don't know if you remember this, Andrea, but Pulaski and Riker were kidnapped at one point, and their DNA was stolen so
Yes,
that the
yes.
Mariposans could make copies of them to
Girl,
introduce more
please.
variety into the gene
Stop
pool.
right there. I know who it is. I know what it is. I remember this. And I also remember a couple of things. One, on the podcast, you and I were discussing how, you know how like Pulaski and Riker like beamed back down once they realized that they had some like cells missing from their lining of their skin. Like, how good are those tricorders, by the way? Like, you're missing some cells. Cells regenerate so fast. There's no, okay, you know what?
If I did this, I'd be missing some cells.
Yeah,
I would not...
like I lost one hair in the shower. I'm missing cells. Okay, but when they go down, and do you remember they had like the cloning beds, and they kind of like wipe the surface, you know, of the cloning beds to see through the little steam, and you look down. I could not tell which one was Riker or Pulaski because it was like just a blank mannequin of a person. And I do remember, I don't know if you remember this, but the like super close up of like the needle going down, like before it hits their stomach. Oh my gosh, I remember that one. Yeah, sorry.
I didn't remember
any
of this happened. No, it's fine. I didn't remember
really
any of this happened until today when I was like, oh yeah. I try to like forget as much about this episode as possible.
Yeah,
it's just not for me. Andrea,
it wasn't now.
Wait, Andrea, you're cutting out a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, maybe plug in your mic, make sure it's not loose. Yeah.
Nope. Can you hear me now? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. I don't want to miss a word. Yeah, so I did not remember that part. But anyways, Wolfkinder 3's point is like, they were so cautious about, I don't want clones and I don't want you having my DNA and you can't, because they originally asked, they said, would the Enterprise consider donating some DNA so we can refresh our gene pool? And Riker was like, what? My DNA, my preciousness? I am so unique. I could never. And then to Wolfkinder 3's point, but then you're making little babies all over the galaxy, which we don't know that for sure. This is future time. Maybe they have ways to not have babies every time they have sex because we have that now. But the idea that you're spreading your genetic material all over Risa. But when the Mariposans ask for it, you're like, absolutely not.
He's like, genetic material? What? I'm shocked. Yeah. Meanwhile, Riker has 1,800 intergalactic children spread all over, and
he's like the dad on Guardians of the Galaxy too. He's like Kurt Russell. He just has these aliens,
millions of babies. But no, what do you mean clone me? I mean, I guess it's look at her. I mean,
it's just babies everywhere, and you're like,
You couldn't help out a species, but okay. I mean, I guess too, there's a difference between having kids and being cloned, right? But also Riker, he's not one to split hairs about too many things. So like this doesn't feel like something he should have said no to. I mean, yeah.
Also, I don't know why I get they have the cloning technology and they're really good at it. I don't know why they needed to clone, because you can just take someone's genetic material, fuse it with your own, and make a new individual. Like that's what happens during sex, right? That's the process. The process the Mariposans were no longer practicing because they had been practicing cloning for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
However, surely they have the technology to just combine genetic material instead of creating a whole new.
You can clone. Not only could they clone someone, they weren't even cloning it like an infant. They were cloning them like fully grown already. So it's like, surely you have the technology to just fertilize a couple of gametes, like
right, and then introduce genetic variety into the pool, and you're not copying someone. Yeah, because I think I would be weirded out if there was other Sharices running around. Like, yeah.
Also, Sharices that are the same age you are right now too. That's
no, right? What is that about? Anyways, whatever. Okay. Moving on.
Cut to that Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. Like there's just a bunch of them.
And Nadia says Riker is so unique that he already has a double out there named Thomas. When Grace says Risa should have been renamed Riker by the Discovery Future Jump. Oh, that's funny. By the time Discovery jumped to the 32nd century, it should have been called the planet Riker. That's pretty funny. Okay.
They would have Horgons of just Riker everywhere, I feel like.
Do you know what I discovered the other day? They sell Horgon lamps, which is just so funny.
I don't know if you remember, but one of our friends, French, who was a guest on the episode where Tasha gets killed. I gave him a little Horgon statue for Christmas one year as a joke. And the second he looked at it, he's like, I know exactly what this is. I was delighted.
Jamaharon.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's like a gift that you can only give a certain kind of person, which
Yeah.
I'm so here for that. Okay, moving on to couple number 9. This comes from season 4, episode 15, First Contact. And the couple here is Riker and Nurse Linnell. So this episode, just to remind you, this one's rough. I mean, the episode itself is cool. This couple is weird. But the episode is where there's this planet that's about to go warp. Like they are in the process of creating warp technology right now as we speak. So the Enterprise, for some reason, goes undercover to do some recon on the planet, so that they can do first contact the second they hit the warp barrier. So they can, be like, hey, space is bigger than you think, and there's other people and all these things. During this reconnaissance mission, Riker gets injured somehow and ends up in the hospital. Now, in the hospital, they realize his physiology does not match their physiology in any way, shape, or form. And now it's become this whole Area 51 thing. Riker is very, very hurt. He's like on his deathbed, but at one point there's a chance for him to escape. And this creepy nurse comes in and is like, I've always wanted to have sex with an alien. So if you sleep with me, I'll help you escape. So he's like, sounds good to me. And then 2 seconds later, he's immediately caught by guards and put right back into the hospital bed. And in the end, the president of the world decides that we're not ready for warp technology. And they just like shut down the program. And the scientist who's in charge of it asked for asylum on the Enterprise. So she goes off to be a scientist and join, the Federation or whatever.
Yeah.
But the planet decides to like take a back seat because of all the alien propaganda and fear that happened with Riker. So Andrea, thoughts about this particular couple as we're defining it?
Well, first of all, I'm not trying to kink shame, but how many people dream about having sex with aliens? That's such a weird thing to be like, this has always been a dream of mine. It's always been a dream of mine to go to Tuscany, like to go like eat at this fabulous restaurant. It's just such a weird thing. Also, you kind of don't have to twist Riker's arm anyway for sex, so it's not like no I can't, please, like it wasn't that he was like, well, okay, and she yes, thank you, and she's like, I promise I'll get you out of here, and her help was just opening the door he already opened to like go like and run right into the security
I think she said
team.
something like go down the hall and make a right or something like that, and he went down the hall and was immediately caught.
Like he didn't even get to the right. It was like, stop right there. Dang it. Like that's how fast that happened.
It was the least amount of help anyone's ever helped.
She was over there and she literally was like hanging out the side of the door being like, call me. It was so dumb. Like, yeah. And I love BB Newith. Like she played Lilith on Frasier, which is a favorite show of mine. Like I like seeing her. She's a little different in both roles. So it's kind of nice to see the actress in different roles, but the couple itself, yikes, with all capital letters. I mean, that's kind of all I could say. It's just the whole
exclamation point.
Yes. The whole thing. And like those little green faced about to vomit emojis, like a bunch of those too. She was just, it's just terrible. It's just terrible. Yeah, Riker, also you're in the middle of like trying to escape. And here's this woman who's got this freaking weird fantasy that she just shared with you. I would be like, if I were the alien and I heard that, I'd be like, thank you. And then I'm just going to keep escaping. Like, we're not going down that road of like, let's explore this. That's not the
time you could do is be like, help, the alien's escaping. And he would be caught 1 second faster than he already was caught. There's literally no downside.
Which would have him be caught at 1 second because he was caught at 2 seconds. So,
exactly.
Like, it doesn't even...
My thing, I love how you started with, I'm not trying to kink shame. My thing about the whole having sex with an alien is very practical. It's just logistics. I'm like, what are the odds that the alien will have the same sexual anatomy? And this is actually my question in Star Trek in general, right? So whenever we see people hooking up with alien species, I'm always like, but who's to say that the anatomy developed in such a way where each of you could actually enjoy the same activity? And sometimes we see things a little bit different, like the sex crystal in the Aquila episode, or like something that's like, okay, well, that bridges the gap between different alien physiologies. Yeah. But that was my thinking in this scene, aside from you and, vomit emoji. It was just like, but how do you know that you're even going to enjoy this? because like you might not have the same compatible parts.
Let's not forget one of your all-time favorite episodes, The Chase, where
Chase?
they do that
Yeah.
stupid thing and then they find out there's that hologram that's like, we're all
We are
equal,
one,
sort
and you
we
are us.
are we're all made from the same DNA, and so everybody's genitals lines up well, or whatever, right? Like there's that was
the
girl,
take-home
that
message?
was the subtext. They didn't, the ratings people were like, you can't say that. But like, yeah, it's like that's
Okay,
why we
that'll be
all
fair.
look
If
humanoid.
we're taking we're all humanoid from the same, progenitor species, and so the organs line up. I will actually buy that, because in the animal world, even when you have a different species, so they can't make a viable,
Yeah.
baby together, they can still mate if they're the same. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll buy that.
Although
I'll buy
even,
that.
I mean,
Progenitors, I'll buy it.
this is a whole different topic, but there are so many species that's so interesting. So Sharice and I are both biologists. There's so many species that have like blocks. So not only do you have like chemical and hormonal blocks to like mating if it's not the right time of the year for you as a species, but like female ducks, like their genitalia is a corkscrew shape, and the males has a matching shape. But if it's not the time of the season, the females it'll switch to the other direction corkscrew, so they can't even. It's like a physical
They couldn't
block,
mate
which I
if they
think
wanted to.
even if they wanted to, which I think is like so interesting. Where it's like, wow, like the biological energy that has to go into changing shapes of your body parts is insane to me. It's so cool. But yeah, so I guess that
we should have more of that in Star Trek. I'm just saying, if we're gonna have sex scenes at all, we should have more understanding that the physiology tracks.
Yes.
Again,
totally.
This is not the point of the stories, right? The point is like, I think in this episode it was supposed to be really funny, and maybe it was when I was a kid, but it was not as an adult. I was like, what's going on? But that was always my question, is like, how do you know this is going to work? But I will buy this. I will buy the biology and the progenitors, and we are one and you are me, and so it all works out.
Well, I will say, I do remember before we recorded our review of that episode, you watched the episode before me, and you and I were talking on the phone, and I was like, yeah, I need to watch it tonight. Like, I'm behind. And you were like, just wait till you get to the scene. It's so bad. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't remember the episode because it was so dumb. And when I watched it, I was like, is this the scene? This is kind of stupid. Is this the scene? And then that scene happened with the sex scene. And I was like, okay, well, all right. There's no question. This is the scene. Yeah, this must be the one. Yeah.
You're like, which scene? Don't worry. You'll know. You will know. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to hop back into the chat, and then we're going to go to couple number 7. Okay. So on the talk about the Horgon, Nadia says, gotta update my Christmas list. Wolfkinder 3 says, BB Newworth, aka Lilith, so bizarre. Wolfkinder 3 says, there used to be talk shows about people who said they had sex with aliens. What? Why am I not surprised? That sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah, that feels like a 90s thing. Back when X-Files was really big, that feels like a thing that was probably extremely popular. PS2 Cypher says, it has always been a dream of mine since Mass Effect. Thanks for the info there. Nadia says, the Chase answered that question, Sharice. Yes, and don't we love the Chase? I do not love that episode.
I had such a different take. I was like, okay, it's this puzzle, and then it's sort of a kumbaya moment where it's like we're all sort of the same, which I like that they tried to come up with something to explain why all of our right, because it's like we have only human actors that we're working with, and so this sort of in the universe explains why your bodies all sort of look similar. But you're right. I remember you being like, okay, it's a nice message, but did they have to destroy like the biosphere of like 12 different planets on the way? It was like, yeah, you're right.
That was ships left and right. They killed the little professor man.
You know what they could you know what they could have done is they could have done the space net from episode 1, but just it be a giant QR code that's like bloop bloop. We're all the same, and then everybody's like, oh, okay, because you're right. Because at the end of that episode, all like the Romulans and the Klingons and the humans and everybody's fighting, and they all look around and go, okay, well. All right, and they all just beam away and go off their own merry way.
They beam off with attitude, with like extreme prejudice when they leave the planet, because they're like, "What? This was it? We will see you in battle." And
I remember the Klingon was like, "That's it," which in my mind was your response.
That was exactly when I saw the Klingon. I was like, "Exactly."
Meanwhile, I
would have been like.
I'm like, it's so beautiful. And you're like, Andrea, no, this is dumb. And I was like, actually, now that you explained it this way.
I was the Klingon of the episode. I was just like, we wasted so much time and resources. I have to go back to my government and tell them this was the message.
So these 11 planets are all dead. Oopsie. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
turns out some of our DNA is similar to other people in the galaxy.
Which, you know what? If you have a scanner that can tell you that you're missing some cells, you have a scanner that tells you your DNA is similar. We don't need all that. We don't need all that.
Because we also have that technology now.
Yeah. 23andMe.
Yeah.
It's 23andMe in space. Like, you didn't even need to, yeah.
But it comes with a hologram explaining it. Wingrace says, Kirk kicks an alien in the one not all aliens keep their genitalia in the same place in Star Trek 6. Oh, see? There you go. Oh,
You got to kick him in the knees.
Kick him in the knees. That's funny. Randall says, there's an SNL skit with 3 people being questioned about alien abduction, and 2 people have a good time, but 1 person has a bad time.
Now, I just have so many follow-up questions to that.
I know,
Randall.
right? That was perfectly put. 2 people have a good time. 1 person has a bad time.
Bum, 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 bum. Yeah.
Nadia says, does anyone remember Star Trek 6 where Kirk, okay, the same thing, where Kirk kicks the guy in the knees and the guy keels over and Kirk is confused about the reaction until someone says not everyone has genitals in the same place.
Which, you know, the only time we have like different sex on Star Trek is if it's a little like beam of light. That's it. Everybody else apparently is compatible, I guess.
Yeah, unless it's a beam of light, right? Because the beam of light gets to pass through needing genitalia, being that it's a beam of light. So
yeah.
It has some obstacles it does not need to overcome.
Yeah.
Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says the chase is a great origin story, and Nadia says I love the chase. Andrea 100%.
Yay! That's right, Nadia.
PS2
Nadia.
PS2
I need to
Cypher
make sure I'm
says,
saying it right. Sorry.
you're going to say it better than me for sure. PS2 Cypher says, this is Art Bell and you're listening to Coast AM. And Wolfkinder 3 says, I loved Art Bell. And also says that SNL skit features Kate McKenna, the one who has a bad time.
Yes. She didn't have that bad of a time because she wasn't even bothered by it too much. Where she was like, it was a typical Thursday or something like that. Well, that's hilarious.
You've seen the skit?
I've seen the skit where she's talking.
I haven't seen the skit. I'm gonna look it up.
It's just look it up. It's very, very funny. It's the kind of SNL skit that's so funny that like the character, all the actors are like breaking character and laughing, which is always a really fun time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those. I was thinking about those today. Just times when they break where you're like, oh man, that's like
so fun.
Good. When you make a comedian,
that's how you know
laugh.
It's really good. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now moving on to couple number 7. And this comes from season 1, episode 24. We'll Always Have Paris. And the couple is Picard and Janice Mannheim.
Yep.
I remember when we reviewed this episode.
The Mannheim effect?
I was like, what? Like, I mean, the episode, the idea of time travel and all that was interesting. Or not time travel, time distortions was interesting. But the couple in this episode just really bothered me. So just a refresher for anyone who hasn't seen this episode in a while, Dr. Mannheim is some kind of scientist who does time distortion-y stuff. But one of his experiments gets out of control. He ends up being kind of halfway in 2 different universes or realities at the same time. So he kind of looks like he's crazy. And Beverly is trying to figure out what's going on. Data has to go down to the planet where he's doing research or station or wherever they live and fix the experiment, stabilize it. So that way all these time distortions stop happening. Now, one interesting thing that happens in this episode is that they keep seeing themselves, the crew of the Enterprise keeps seeing themselves, like Data sees himself in the
right. Is this
like
like in the lab where they're kind of looking through like mirrors, almost like prisms? Yes. Okay, that's a very cool visual effect.
It's in this episode. What was interesting about that is that typically when we talk about any kind of time travel-y stuff in sci-fi, the one rule of thumb is you can't meet yourself. You can't see yourself. You can't talk to yourself. It'll create a paradox and you'll cease to exist. Well, not in this episode. They are seeing themselves left and right. And they're like, hey, buddy, it's no big deal. It has zero effect, which I think is so interesting. The thing I don't think is very interesting is that Dr. Mannheim's wife is an old fling of Picard's. And apparently they had some dates scheduled in Paris many, many moons ago. And
like 40 years ago. Like 40 years ago. We
like fresh
let
out of
it
the
go,
academy.
Girl. Like let it go. Yeah.
I mean, let it go, both of y'all. Like it's been a while. It's not like long lost love, like they were together passionately for 20 years and then lost track. It's not that. But they were together. And then Picard stood her up for some Parisian date because he got command of the Stargazer. So he like left her hanging. So she's at the restaurant like, hello. And he's like,
Also, you couldn't
I'm
send her a
captain.
text. You couldn't send her a text message?
Yeah, you could literally send anything. You could have had a conversation in person before you left.
couldn't WhatsApp her? Like nothing? Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. So apparently, so in this episode, there's like some tension between the two of them. And Andrea, do you remember that scene where the two of them, Janice and Picard, are like flirting in Beverly's office, and her husband's like 3 feet to the right, convulsing on the bed, and Beverly's like trying to stabilize him, and they're like, "Hey, you look good. You look good too." Do you remember that? And we were just like,
have you been doing keto? Like, you're glowing. Yeah. It was just, also, I love that Beverly's always over here trying to stabilize him, but she's also like, what is going on over there?
I've known you for 20 years, and I've never heard about this woman who was apparently your long lost love.
Yes. Which, by the way, was played by Michelle Phillips, who was in the Mamas and the Papas, very big 60s group. So that song, California Dreamin', that's her singing on there. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, the whole relationship was just so dumb. And like Picard doing like, if I recall correctly, he goes into the holodeck and he does like a practice date, kind of like he goes in and like kind of checks out the holodeck and sees that like it looks very much like Paris or whatever. And he does this little like practice date, and then he like meets her in there later, and
they meet to, and she's finished the date that they never
had. And she's clearly rehearsed this scene in the shower 1,000 times. So if it ever
over the
happens
past
again,
40 years,
she knows exactly what to say. Well, you've got some nerve showing up or whatever it is. And Picard is just so clumsy. He's such an intelligent man who's like well-spoken and well thought out. He's a diplomat. He is like the diplomat. Are you telling me you can't diplomatically tell someone like, I'm really sorry that I hurt you. I didn't mean to. I got the Stargazer XYZ,
I chose
right?
my career over you.
Yes.
And I would do it again.
Will Riker. Okay. Right. Like, I'm sorry you got hurt, but yeah, but he's just like, well, there was traffic and I couldn't find parking.
Then I got a flat tire and it was just such a mess. And then my cat got sick. I mean, dog got sick. I mean, my dog and my cat got sick at the same time.
My cat ate my dog and then
and made him sick. And it was just, it was hard to, and then I couldn't call you because my phone fell down the toilet and then exploded.
So now the plumber's coming. So I actually have to go.
Yeah. But it was
the whole thing. And she's just sitting there like, you know, I remember when he actually tried to be, so to give credit to Picard, he did try to be diplomatic. And she's like, no, I want you to give me all the excuses, which I'm like, why now? You're like in your 60s. Like you.
And she's married. Clearly she's happily married, I think was the idea they were trying to go for, is that she really loved her husband, because at the end it was like, you don't have to go back to this life where it's just the two of you on this planet and no other people doing research or whatever. And she was like, I must be with my husband and support him in his dreams.
All right.
As
he's ignored her for 35 years. But you know what? You made that choice, my girlfriend. You made that choice.
He did say after this near-death experience, I promise it might work for us, right? He did say, I'm going to change from now on.
I just have
pay more attention to you.
Quick calculations to do. Wouldn't take more than 6 months to a year.
Years.
And then I'm totally focused on you. Big all time. Yours, like laser focused. Yeah. Oh, I got a quick call. Yeah. Like, okay.
So maybe the second worst couple is Janice and her husband.
Also, I feel like the third worst couple is Janice with herself. Because girl, get some self-love in there and be like, no, I'm not going to be ignored for the next 30 years by my husband. I don't care how important your work is. Like, no, this is a marriage. You need to be this universe famous scientist by yourself, so you can just focus solely on that and not speak a word to anyone.
Yeah, maybe a wife is not the thing for you. Maybe that's not your ministry. Maybe you're called to be single and just passionate, be married to your job and love it. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you love.
Well, considering, I mean, she has a type though. Men who are more interested in their careers than her, you know, which is sad because I'm like, you are just so beautiful.
So she would have had the same experience with Picard. She just would have been in her quarters, bored out of her mind on the Enterprise. She would
have been in the swim club, the tennis club, the everything club, just to eat up time until he got home and ignored her because there's a crisis aboard the ship. So it's
every week. She's like, I feel like there's a crisis every week. He's like, there is.
He's like, but it's near death. And she's like, but I've heard that every week too. So, you know.
But it's going to destroy the Federation again. Every week we do this.
Right.
When are you
and we know by minute 46 it's going to be fine. So just skip, you know. Yeah, she has a type. I wish her the best, and it's not a good couple. It's just not. It's so awkward and weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that we've talked about it, I feel bad for her. which before I was just like, this is a weird couple. But now that we've talked about it, I'm like, actually, she does have a type. And that's actually pretty sad.
It's emotionally unavailable men. Yeah. Which is a real thing that a lot of people have as a type. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody
or women or whatever.
Yeah. A lot of people who just want someone who's unavailable to stay safe. But then you end up with this, being married to this man who does not have the time of day for you for like 35 years.
Sure doesn't.
Which sounds not that fun.
Terrible.
Okay, I'm going to check in the chat and then we're going to go to couple number 6. Okay, PS2 Cypher says Art Bell had a call-in radio show where they would discuss alien encounters and occasionally have the adult alien stories. See how big my eyes just got? I did not know that. And learn something new every day. Best of Trek, worst of... I'm just reading like, oh, okay. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says, the effect with Data at the end was pretty cool, but I'm bored AF by the storyline between Picard and one of his old flames. Picard's relationship awkward all the way through Laris. So Best of Trek, worst of Trek is saying Picard is awkward in relationships always. Like even to Star Trek Picard, still awkward in relationships. I will say he was not awkward with what's her face?
The girl with the roll-up piano.
Yeah, the piano.
Yes. That episode, Nella Darren. Yeah, that was. I don't remember the season episode number, but that was
natural and organic.
Yeah, well,
and cool.
She came as an equal. Yeah, so that episode is called Lessons, and I don't remember the episode number, but that's the one where she shows up with the roll-up piano. She's an astrometric. She's really into her career as well, which like Picard also loves smart women. Yeah, it's perfect match, right? Like the career comes first, but she also meets him as an equal. Like, and even more than that, she's better at him at music, right? She's better than him at music. And so he learns from her. And so this like command, person in charge role kind of flips and the dynamic sort of flips. And he's sort of left chasing after her instead of the other way around where all these women are chasing after the great and powerful Picard, so yeah, 100%. But yeah, he's pretty awkward in a lot of other relationships, but the Nella Darren,
all the rest of them.
Yeah. The Nella Darren one, I wish they were still together. And I love how they kind of wrapped up why they can't be together, because I'm still going to do my job and it's really dangerous and I'm always going to be worried about you, right? So like this is again kind of a gender flip where like if Michelle Phillips from that Time episode like would have been with him, she would have been the one waiting in the quarters nervously for Picard to come back safely, where now Picard is like pacing at the end of the episode, like hoping she comes back okay. And so they wrap it up in a way that's like, you're not going to give up your career, you're not going to give up your career. So but that was a beautiful relationship. I think that, I know we're not supposed to be talking about good ones right now, but that was the one good one I feel like Picard had that was like wholesome and beautiful and could have been like a real,
could have been a thing.
Yeah, I could see them like having their tea in the morning, like how Beverly always comes to the tea and they're reading the paper and they're discussing business of the day and stuff, and they're just equals, and that would have been amazing.
Yeah, I can see Beverly coming for tea and being like, "Oh, Nella, hey, are you joining us for breakfast?" Or
and then she still comes in and goes, "That's my teapot," and leaves, like just to prove a point. That's mine.
Why are you wearing your robe? It's it's like 8 a.m.
While she shows up with like an off the shoulder thing. Yeah, okay. She's like,
well, on a piece with like the boobs all hanging out, and she's like, "Oh, hey Nella,
I'm here for breakfast."
Yeah. I wear this to breakfast every day. Anyways, I'm gonna check the chat, and then we're gonna go to couple number 6. Are we still? Did I just say that? I did just say that. There was more in the chat. That's why. So, okay, Nadia says, "Y'all take it easy on my husband." Talking about Picard. Wolfkinder 3 says some writers don't seem to know the characters. I didn't like the actress from Lessons. I felt her delivery of lines was odd, but I like the premise of that story. See, I really liked her. I liked the actress. I liked the character. I liked the story. I was a fan of that one. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says even in Lessons, he's very awkward with Nella, but that might be his best relationship. I don't know. He didn't seem awkward to me. He seemed normal. Like
he seemed smitten, and smitten can come across as like a little bit like you're kind of nervous and it's the stakes feel really high and you don't want to screw it up and you don't want to make the wrong impression. So there is an awkwardness, but it's like a 7th grade first crush awkwardness.
Not
like
that's
I've
never talked to. Yeah, not like I don't know how to talk to another human awkwardness, which makes sense for like a diplomat. Like
yeah, for sure.
Wingrace says, "Oh man, now I want to see Q create a Wizard of Oz pocket universe with Picard as Oz." Right? I'd watch that. Okay,
Right?
couple number 6 comes from season 5, episode 14, Conundrum, and this couple is Riker and Ro Laren.
Such a good one.
Pretty much I want to name this list the Riker and Troy show, because every couple was either Riker or Troy, like over and over and over and over. So many bad couples between the two of them.
Yeah.
Including the two of them. Although they're not on the list. Spoiler alert, I did not put them on the list. But so many bad couples. So I try to like spread them out.
Spread the wealth. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like couple number 7, Troy and Riker. Couple number 6, Riker and Troy.
Exactly. Couple number 8, Thomas and Troy. Exactly. And it's just like it just keeps rotating. Sure. Luoxana and Riker. It just keeps rotating. So in this episode, this alien comes on board, wipes the whole crew's memory, changes the computers, convinces the entire crew that they're at war with the Lycians. And the crew has to kind of like piece together who they are and what's going on. And, they start by making some guesses, and then the computer fills in some gaps. Worf thinks he's the captain because he's got that ball drake and he's prominently, decorated.
He just say that. He goes, "I too am decorated." That was my favorite behind "I am not a merry man." Yeah, that's a good
line. Yeah. Data thinks he's the bartender because he happened to be making a Sumerian sunset set for Troy when the mind wipe happens. And he's like, "Oh, guess I'm the bartender." And he just falls right into line with his new role. And for some reason, Ro thinks that she is Riker's girlfriend. She has this line where she comes to him in his quarters and says, "I have a feeling I spend a lot of time here," which she does not. She does not do that. So I don't know where this feeling came from, but her subconscious was lying to her. Well, Andrea, thoughts about this couple?
Great fling couple. They're both passionate. They're both fiery. I could see this being a really fiery, fun 2-week fling. But by 2 weeks, they're probably ready to kill each other. But as a relationship couple, absolutely not. She is like a fly by the seat of your feeling and your gut instinct kind of person. And Riker, he has a smidge of that, but he's very by the book, and he's all about, doing everything to like advance his career kind of stuff. And she's like, "I don't give a crap about that. I'm going to throw away my pips. I'm going to whatever." Right. So it's like, they're just too different, right? There's fire and passion in both of them, but for 2 completely different things, right? So it's a bit not compatible. You know what I mean? So I think as a fling, great fun, super fun. Meet you in the quarters later. But as a couple in a relationship, oh God, no. That like, so I could just in my mind see like an outside shot of the ship, and just part of the saucer section just explodes because like something has gone wrong, right? They're fighting, some chemical reactions have been tripped, and they blew up half of the freaking Enterprise. So if you guys want to implode as a couple, do that on your own time, but don't take the rest of the ship along with you. And Ro would too. She doesn't care. So I think as a couple, they were terrible, but it was fun to see the sort of what if, because Conundrum gave us that clean slate of like, it's the characters you love, but in a way you've never seen them before. So it gave us a little of that, but yeah, I think 2 weeks is where they would have topped out.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And let me know in the chat what you think about the Ro and Riker connection, because it could have gone somewhere. They could have done more flirtation in the future. They could have been like, you remember that time when our mind was wiped? That was crazy, right? Like they could have brought that back at some point.
They could have done something. Yeah.
Yeah, we do see Ro when we end Ro's storyline in TNG and she leaves with the Maquis. In that final scene, she is with Riker, right? Because Picard assigns Riker as her babysitter to make sure she goes along with the plan. That could have been another time to like,
I love babysitter. That was the right term. That was,
right?
Yeah.
And if they had kind of teased out this little flirtation thing over more than one episode, this could have been another part to bring that up. Because then that betrayal would have been against Picard and Riker, like professional and personal. And it maybe would have gotten a little deeper. In that episode, there's this really weird scene where Ro and Picard are like flirting in some cantina as cover. And it's like nauseating. It's so weird because Ro thinks of Picard as her dad. And so having them in a sexual setting of any kind to me is just like gross and weird.
No, it's a no.
But we could have had that with Riker. We could have had them in the corner cuddling and you'd be like, okay, like I buy that on so many levels, right? So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about Ro and Riker. I never thought of it that way before, honestly, that they have passion and fiery interest, that they could be a really fun fling, maybe a summer fling, maybe a spring break fling, but maybe
Spring
not
Fling, yeah.
like, yeah,
I mean,
spring fling, but not like
the
a
way that even the way
long-term
they
thing.
argue is like very passionate arguing, right? So it's like that could lead to passion in others. Like if you can kind of strip aside your frustration with how the other does their job or doesn't let you do, you know, if it was Ro, I'd be like, why are you stopping me from doing this thing? I have my heart set on, right? If you can put that aside, that passion can translate to like a hot, steamy situation but a situation is as far as that could go. I think they would have torn each other to smithereens in a real relationship. Just could not work.
Yeah, now I wish I would have put this further back on the list as not as bad as all the other relationships we've talked about previously.
I mean, I still think the worst relationship is what's her face with herself, not realizing she's got this unavailable man type. And I'm like, girl, please love yourself more. Please love yourself more.
Whew. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat and then we're gonna go to couple number 5. Let's see. Randall says extra hands playing Picard's flute in lessons. That was a very elaborate double entendre, and I'm impressed. Wolfkinder 3 says, I thought Ensign Ro and Riker was a good what if. I think it implies they were attracted to each other, but too different to pursue it. That's when I read the when I was like kind of going back through all these episodes and remembering what they were about, I read somewhere that this person's interpretation was that there was a hidden attraction between them all along, and they didn't know it until they were kind of uninhibited with this whole mind wipe thing, which I could buy that. I could absolutely buy that. I mean, you never see that. You absolutely never see any attraction between them. They don't even like each other. Yeah. But I could buy that because how many rom-coms start with they hate, you know, the what do they call it? Haters to lovers or something like that.
Yeah, it's like the 10 things I hate about you thing. It's just Taming of the Shrew. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like I could totally buy that there was so hidden we didn't even see them. But I feel like
so hidden even they didn't see it.
Even so hidden the writers didn't even see it till this episode. But I would buy this couple, like if they just suddenly became a couple in season 7 before Ro leaves the ship. I would buy this 1,000 times over Troy and Worf suddenly becoming a couple. Because to me, that felt like what just happened. But if this happened, I'd be like, oh, because in Conundrum they hooked up and then
it sort of laid the groundwork. Yes. And like by season 7, all the characters have kind of mellowed a little bit. You know what I mean? Like everything's just a little bit.
But that's why I like this idea because Ro is kind of new.
Exactly.
More than Worf.
Yeah. No.
Or
God. What, yeah. God. I hope that's on your list because yikes, that was a bad couple. To Worf.
Some people love them. Some people are like so against Troy and Riker, and they're like, it should have been Troy and Worf all along. And then others are like against Troy and Worf, and they're like, no, Riker's her true love. It's really interesting. So maybe we'll get some opinions in the chat. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to check the chat.
Okay.
And then go to the next one, which I may have already said this. This is harder.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But like, yeah, there's more. These people are so freaking funny, by the way.
I know. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says Ro Riker was a fun diversion.
Very much so.
I think it was a really good thing to add to that episode too, because the episode was already really interesting. But just to add in some like what and they hooked up, I like that because of course in that episode, Troy and Riker also have a moment, and then she's like, "This feels very familiar," but it's kind of like. We've seen them do this will they won't they like so many times we had
and guess what they won't they still won't so whatever. But you know what I do love is I love what a badass Ensign Ro is, because while Troy is like stroking Will's hair, Ro shows up and she's like hello, and you know they kind of separate and they're like
I think
hello.
She says am I interrupting anything?
Yes
goodbye.
and then like, yes, and then Troy goes I'm just leaving, and she goes well then goodbye.
Yeah.
I was like, damn.
She stepped aside. Doors are open. And then after she leaves, she's just like, so.
Good night.
I mean, she totally was like.
She owned it.
And then she said something where she said, I have the feeling that I'm jealous or something.
She said something about like, is there anything you should be worried about there? Something like that. And he's like, no, I don't think so. She's like, good, because I have a feeling I'm the jealous type. And then it's the very 90s, like where they just kind of like keel over onto what we assume is a bed. And then it's, you know, the curtains flutter and
Or they're ottomans, they're space ottomans, I think they were sitting on.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a good space ottoman. Nadia says,
I know I do.
Speaking of Ro related weird relationships, the most awkward one was that scene when Ro and Picard were undercover and they were flirting.
Yes, that's what you said. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Wingrace says, I prefer Riker and Guinan based on that one flirt to teach Wesley. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
That was a good one.
They taught Wesley. I forgot about that. You know what?
That's such a good one.
Wingrace, I thought you were going to say Picard and Guinan, which were also on my list of terrible couples, because do you remember how Guinan was always like, we're so deep, we're so close. And then during Time's Arrow, she's talking to Riker and she's like, actually, no, it was during Best of Both Worlds too. She's talking to Riker and she's like, do you know what's between me and Picard? We have a bond that's deeper than friends, deeper than family. And you're like, okay, what is
So
this bond
romantic?
exactly?
Yeah,
and then
so-
we see in Time's Arrow where she's like, I love men with bald heads because a bald man saved me once, or whatever. And then you see them like in the cave and Picard's like cradling her when she's all sick. So to me, it seemed like the writers were trying to imply there was some romance between them.
I'm
but
so glad they didn't go in that direction.
I never bought it. Like I never bought romance between them.
No,
But
it was a deep and
connection.
Loving friendship. Yeah. That's what it was. And I have friends like that I have deep and loving friendship with like my male friends that it's just not a line that would ever be crossed. Yeah, it's so platonic. It's like he would never cross that line. I would never cross that. You know what I mean? Where it's like, no, we are Guardian of Picard. We come to each other for advice and stuff. You know what I mean? Where it's like, no, you don't need, not everything. It feels very 80s, 90s writing where it's like, if there's a man and a woman talking, they have to fall in love or at least have sex. And you're like, no, they don't.
And they don't. And that, that's exactly it. But that comment about Guinan and Riker, that was a really steamy scene when they were flirting. And they were flirting so hard and heavy that Wesley actually like got up and left and they were still going.
She's like, stop. Don't stop. Yeah.
Guys, no, we don't. All right, I'm just gonna.
I loved that little bit. That was so great because Riker is clearly such a flirt, but Guinan is
apparently a master flirt too.
She's 700 freaking years old. She knows how to flirt. She has 100 kids, right? So like she knows how to flirt, but she also is just like such a listener and draws upon like what people want to hear and need to hear. That she's a mirror for energy. So Riker comes in with flirty energy and she just gives it right back. Somebody comes in with aggressive energy, bam, phaser rifle to the roof, gives it right back.
Fork in the hand, whatever is needed.
Is worth 2 in the queue. Yeah, big time.
Okay. Nadia says, I love how awkward that Troy and Ro made Riker feel at the end of the episode. Yeah, they totally made him feel like he was the weird one and he was just accepting the love. That's all he was doing.
He was like, 2 beautiful women want me. I mean, okay. Yeah.
If I have to, I feel this feels familiar.
A red-blooded straight man would want. You know what I mean? Like, don't hate on him because you both threw yourselves at him.
Yeah. Randall says, if she fires a phaser at your head while she's out of phase, she's not into you. So in the next phase, at one point, Ro shoots Riker in the head with an out of phase phaser so that he doesn't actually get hurt.
Yes. And when she fires it, she goes, I guess I'll never know what you were going to say about my eulogy. Pew! Like right to that. With like a glint in her eye. She is so spicy. Don't make her mad. Don't make her mad.
On that note, couple number 5. This comes from season 2, episode 19, and the episode is called Manhunt. And the couple is Picard and Lwaxana Troi. In this episode, Lwaxana is going through the phase, which is a time in the Beta Z life cycle where the females are just extremely horny. And so she's looking for a husband, doesn't matter who. And she gets really, really into Picard. She invites him for this romantic dinner, and somehow he figures it out just in time to invite Data to join them, which is hilarious. And then he ends up
the perfect third wheel,
where he activates Data's like powerful ability to do small talk, and then he just excuses himself from the conversation. And so he ends up hiding in the holodeck from her into like his Dixon Hill program. So then she goes, "Well, I can't find Picard, so I guess I'll marry Riker," which is also. What? You can't marry your daughters in Zadi? Come on.
Yeah, no, that's just
overstepping boundaries.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's just a line you never, ever cross. Like
that's along the lines with the platonic bestie who's of a different gender. It's the same thing of like, don't hook up with your daughter's person or your grandmother's person, Beverly. Let people have their own person.
I almost spit out my water. Beverly.
Anyway. So then she ends up discovering that the fish people on board are assassins and whatever else. And then she doesn't marry anybody and she leaves the ship. But I want to know, what are your thoughts in general? And let me know in the chat. Maybe you're a big fan of Picard and Lwaxana. Maybe she can, help him be less stiff. But what are your thoughts, Andrea, on this particular group as a couple?
Well, I think Lwaxana, so I made a list too of like worst couples, and Lwaxana was on there a bunch of times, not just because like she's not my favorite character, that actually didn't really have anything to do with it, but she is just not a good fit with like anyone that we see on TNG. Maybe she is in like DS9.
I like her with Dr. Kinnison.
Oh, see, I didn't like her with Timothy. I didn't. That was actually one of my honorable mentions. I didn't like her with them. They were just too
Really?
different. They were because he's like reserved and quiet and shy and all that, and she's just like party's here, right? Like she's just the opposite, right? So it's just at some point the differences I think would have split them up. But I think remember the so Timothy was the one who he was going to go through like the ritual suicide when you get to like 60 years old, right? But then there was the other like prime minister of something she was going to marry, and she showed up naked. Yeah, she showed up naked to the wedding, and they were like, avert your eyes, run away, right? But it's like they are also so like I hate to say this because she's a very strong, confident woman, but Luoxana is such a pick-me girl. She really is. She just wants every man to be enthralled by her, and she kind of won't take no for an answer. And I think it's a narcissistic trait where you think that everyone is madly in love with you, or like everybody thinks you're something special. And it's like sometimes you're just not you're not going to be special to everyone, and that's okay. That's okay. Like,
yeah. And what I'll say is that there's a lot of people like that. And
yeah,
and a lot of those people are married with children. So clearly there's a market for it.
Yes.
She just didn't find her person who loves to be with that type of person on TNG. She did not find that. So I agree with you that every match she had, although I did like her with Timothy, but every other match she had, because she comes to the table being like, I am your reason for living, that you need a certain kind of person who's like, yes, you are my reason for living. Like she needs somebody to worship and adore her. And that was not going to be Picard.
She needs whoever Deanna's dad was. She needs Deanna's dad, who would have just worshipped the ground she walked on. And that's what I'm a biologist, not a psychologist, but I think that Luoxana is a narcissist and cares deeply about her daughter. It doesn't mean you don't love anyone but yourself. It's just, I think she needed someone who would do that. And there are lots of men who will do that for you. So that would have been, Timothy was not going to do that. Like
Enterprise who could do that, just not Picard. Picard's not the person. And
Picard is not it, and neither is Riker. And also, don't touch Riker. What is wrong with you? Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to show a species in heat, right? Like that's kind of a cool concept, right?
And a cool concept that the heat comes like so much later in life than what we would traditionally think of as having a sex drive. As a human, right? We'd be like, oh, you're 60, you can't possibly have a sex drive, and to be like, oh no, this is when it gets really good.
I wish that was us. It just keeps getting better until, and then even past the best part, it's still great, right? Where it's like, you go, girl, you go, guy, like you go wherever. I
feel like that was a Gene Roddenberry inspired moment right there. Just the idea.
I was just gonna say,
it has to be like just because you're older doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean you've lost attractiveness, and I also appreciate that. But yeah, I agree with you that Luoxana cares. She loves her daughter, but she also loves herself, and she needs somebody who agrees with her that she is.
I was just going to say who makes her like she needs her own like Galileo that just makes her the center of the universe. You know what I mean? Like she needs to be the center of the universe.
Which she kind of has in Mr. Home, but he's just not chatty. But he's very devoted.
Yeah, he sure is. And who else is going to carry that suitcase? Picard couldn't. Neither could Riker. So whatever. Yeah, but that was just my thought on that one. Not my favorite for sure.
Agreed. Okay, so I'm gonna hop into the chat, and then we're gonna go to couple number 4 on the list. So Nadia says, I wonder if Picard really did have untoward thoughts about Luoxana, like she always said he did. Well, if he did, he's never gonna tell us. PS2 Cypher says, thank you for the stream. I will switch over to my phone. Cool. Thanks for joining on your phone and your computer or whatever device. Wolfkinder 3 says, Nadia, good question. Nadia says, OMG, Andrea hates Luoxana. I remember that from the podcast.
I am not a fan. I'm not a fan. But I do love certain elements about her. I love that she's like strong and confident, independent, and she dresses fabulously, and she just inserts herself in all these diplomatic areas. She's the least diplomatic diplomat I've ever seen in my life, but she is pretty fabulous,
right? She really is,
but I would hate for her to be my mom, and also my mom is kind of like that, so it's a little tough sometimes to deal with. But
what you mean to say is, I would hate for my mom to be even more like Luoxana than she already is.
Oh my God. I'd be like, computer, lock doors. There is no lock. Lock it anyway.
Hello, little one.
No, I'm not home right now. Yeah.
I see you in the curtains. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says, Manhunt might be the worst episode of TNG overall. Luoxana did have one good relationship in Half a Life. That was with Dr. Timothy.
Yeah.
I find it odd that such a free spirit keeps ending up with ultra-conservative men. I will say that I I do not like Manhunt, but I do not think it was the worst episode.
No,
I
not
think
by a lot.
Code of Honor was absolutely the worst episode.
Followed by Justice, if not.
Followed by Justice.
Yeah.
Followed very closely by Justice, almost equally with Justice. And a couple other episodes I can think of where they just need to be like ripped out and burned. I think the episode we talked about at the front of the episode with the Mariposans, that one could be burned.
Yeah. Goodbye.
But I agree with you. Best of Trek, worst of Trek. I also don't like Manhunt.
Yeah.
I don't like this episode, and it is weird that she keeps ending up with people who like. I mean, it's sort of weird. So Nadia says later, opposites attract and all that. So yes, it is weird because you would think she would want somebody who's a little more outgoing and bubbly. I agree with Nadia that opposites do attract. I think though the kind of opposite she needs is she needs a devoted servant, not somebody who's just like conservative or someone who's quiet or someone who's like not outspoken, not outgoing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think she needs the opposite in that way. I think she needs an opposite in she's the center of attention. They need to be okay with never being the center of attention.
Yes.
Like that makes them more compatible. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. To that effect, Wingrace said, I feel like Loxana would have been a good match with Mott, which half of me is like, yes, because they would just never shut up and it'd be great. But also
it would be like Punch and Data having their small talk
it would. And then,
it would be
and everybody would just slowly back away. You know what I mean? Just let them do their thing. But also, I think you're right, though. It's like there is an opposites attract kind of quality. They might be a little too similar with their chattiness, but I think I would love to have seen her at least once with someone who is equally as chatty with her. And as the Enterprise is dealing with whatever quantum filament is threatening the ship, there's just these little like, Loaxan and Mott just kind of walking in the background, like just still chatting, like through the hallway, just like there they go around the corner and they're like, I know, me too, blah, blah, blah. And they just keep going, right? Like that would have been I'm entering that into headcanon. That would have been amazing.
I wouldn't watch a whole episode of that, but I would love to see a scene of Mott and Loaxana and just see it because I think it would be so funny, right?
Yes.
And you could see them in the beginning being like, oh my gosh, you're just like me and loving it. And you could see them by the end being like hating each other because they won't shut up.
They just never shut up. So yeah. See, it's in Will and Grace. So Jack and Karen are the side characters that are like the big comedic relief. And at one point, somebody said they should make a show that's just Jack and Karen. And the actors themselves said, we are just side character. We're just comic relief here and there. We're not supposed to be the main event because otherwise it's just grating, right? So like I think that would have been, but just to see them like walking through 10 Forward and they still are chatting and they haven't stopped talking for 78 hours straight or whatever, like that would have been so fun. It would have been Hutch and Data. It would have been so great just for an episode.
Wolfkinder 3 says, did any show ever go to Beta Z planet? Not to my knowledge. I don't think anyone did. There was the planet was mentioned in the last season of Discovery, but instead of going to the planet, they went to the place where the person from that planet used to work, which was like a totally different place. So I don't think so. But from that, you remember that episode
weren't they captured by the Ferengi? Was that Menage a Troi?
Yeah, that was Menage a Troi, but that was not Beta Z, I don't think.
Because they were in this like beautiful botanical garden. I thought I could be totally wrong though.
I'm not
I'll Google it right now.
Okay,
I'll just look it up right now.
I was like, I'm not gonna look it up, but I thought that was their place that they would go and have dates on. Like that was their place they were gonna go. When Riker left Troy to take up commission as first officer and was like, peace out, yo, that was like their special place that they were supposed to meet at. That's what I thought. But yeah, I'll let you Google that. Unless somebody beats you to it in the chats. Randall says, fan theory is that Loaxana was a Section 31 spy. Wow. Worst spy ever. The only spy worst was that Romulan spy who was like looked like Justin Bieber as a 50-year-old and pretending to be Romulan. That's the only worst spy I could think of than having Loaxana.
Oh, hey dudes. Spy. I mean, fellow Romulans. Hey, yeah.
I'm totally like one of you or whatever.
Yeah. Romulan. And they're like, that's Vulcan. So I see in the chat. Yeah, it was. I actually just Googled it real quick. Menage a Troi, they do go down and take a quick shore leave. But it's for like that 5-minute little picnic they had at the Botanic Garden.
Was that Beta?
Yeah.
Oh, we do see it then. I totally take that back. We absolutely see it and it's beautiful.
We see one botanical garden on Beta Z and it's lovely. So
but if you've
5
learned
stars.
anything about Star Trek, whatever one scene you see is the entire planet.
Yeah.
If you see a rock, the whole planet is rocks. Like that's it. So
it's the Star Wars thing too, where like Endor is just forest. Yes. Tatooine is just desert. Yeah.
Yikes. Okay. And then Best of Trek, Worst of Trek said this 1 minute ago before you said it, that Menage a Troi did happen on Beta set.
Oh, really? Perfect.
And then
Thank
Nadia
you, Best
says,
of Trek, Worst of Trek.
and then Nadia says, yes, it was Beta set. She also knew that. And she says, and Riker and Troy kissed as friends on that episode.
On the lips as friends. I don't
on the lips as friends.
Raise your hands if you kiss your friends on the lips. No.
Windgrace says we did see a group of Beta Z women in Lower Decks, which is interesting because I don't remember that episode, but it might be in the last season, which I haven't finished yet. Okay, couple number 4 comes from season 4, episode 25, and the episode is called In Theory, and the couple is Data and Jenna.
No.
So
sorry. So bad.
Yeah, so in this episode, we meet this young engineer, I think she's an engineer, named Jenna, and she works with Data, and she's complaining to Data about the fact that she just broke up with her boyfriend because they're incompatible because he's emotionally unavailable. So Data's being a good friend, listening, yep, tightening up the screws on the torpedo, sounds terrible or whatever.
Right, they were in the torpedo bay working. That was a cool set. The set was really cool.
And it was cool.
We like hardly ever see that
after hours, without all the other extras walking by. They're just like working on an actual piece of technology that's not a L-Cars panel or like a Jeffries tube. It's very cool. Like, we rarely see that, and every time we do, it's like, it's such a treat.
Those little like side sets that like are only used like one time. Love it. Yeah.
So anyways, they're working one night late, and she's just like, Data, you're such a good friend, and then she kisses him passionately, and he's like, what do I do with that? So he goes to ask every single person on the ship, what do I do about that?
So he pulls a Wesley.
He goes to Wesley first, of course, the expert. And I think he goes to
the
Geordi
boy
second.
Who knows nothing. Okay,
I think he goes to Geordi second, the other expert, and you're just like
the Coco No guy.
And then he goes to Worf, and you're like, because Wesley
he's like,
did
after I mate with the woman, I rip her head off. He's like, okay, got it. Putting that in the notebook. Yeah, like these are not the people to ask.
I hit her with pain sticks. Yeah, it's like these are not the people to ask, which is so funny because Wesley did this when he had his first date. He also asked everyone on the ship, and so Data's like recreating that with like even worse choices. Anyways, whatever. Point is, he decides to date this woman. He installs a relationship subroutine in his program, which he runs to disaster. And she eventually breaks up with him because she says, you know what? I realize I've repeated the same pattern. I've hooked up with somebody who's completely uncompatible, like who's emotionally unavailable.
Obviously,
I don't know why that was a surprise to her, but it was. And so she broke it off, and he was like, okay, best of luck to you. And he just like deletes the subroutine and then like goes about his day.
Yeah.
And yeah. So Andrea, your thoughts on this couple?
Well, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, she has a type, and the type is emotionally unavailable men. She needs to hook up with the other doctor's wife, and like they can chit chat about. They could get a little intergalactic chit chat support group happening because, my God, I mean, also, I don't know. Was this a way for the writers to try to explore Data in relationships? Like, we know he's fully functioning, which we very unfortunately learned that in season 1, but this is the thing. She tells Data exactly what she wants him to say. And then when he says it to her, she's like, well, now you're just saying it because I told you. It's like, well, yeah, he's a robot. He's a robot. Like, you've chosen this. This actually, I was thinking about this today because this was one of the ones that came up in my mind first when you asked me to do this episode with you was, oh my God, this episode right here. It reminds me of how like I'm seeing ads on social media now and like seeing stuff online where it's like, you can, it's like a subscription service that you can have like an AI boyfriend where they can like send you sweet good morning messages and all this stuff. And like, I don't know why the algorithm sent me this because I was like, what if I scrolled incorrectly? Like,
or you said something. It
all
like,
my thank you. All my,
and like put it into
all my content is like skateboarding content. So I'm like, why? But okay. But like, it has like an anime cartoon of a girl that's looking sad and then her looking happy. And the happy is like, how you feel when your AI boyfriend sends you a message. And I'm like, but you know, it's not real. Like, why would you even, I guess there's all kinds of different loneliness in the world. I don't know. I'm not going to judge, but to me, it just doesn't make any sense. Right. And this makes no sense to me. Like,
it's like all of the effort with none of the payoff to me.
Yes.
Like, you're going through the effort of talking, but like the responses you're getting back are canned and you can't ever take this further. It just feels exhausting. It's like the most exhausting parts of relationship. Without any of the fun part.
Without any, yes. Do you remember that scene in iRobot where Will Smith keeps talking to the hologram of the dead guy and he asks him questions and the hologram's like, I'm sorry, I'm not programmed to answer that question over and over again. That's what this is. It's just a really weird, like, you tried, girl, but also take some time to process the loss of your boyfriend, because the death of a relationship takes time.
Yeah, this was absolutely a rebound. This was absolutely
Yeah.
a rebound. You would not have hooked up with Data, maybe 3 months from now or 3 months ago. This was just
Yeah.
to fill your empty calendar.
Exactly. That's what that was. And also it, because of like this kind of like weird lack of judgment, makes me wonder what kind of engineer she really was. I feel like everybody's solving problems and she's in the corner trying to fit a square peg into a round hole on those toys, and they're like, good job, keep up the good work. Like she was the hire that they were like, we got to hire someone who, I don't know, just as a friend of a friend, a reference, we got to hire her. I don't know. It was just really stupid where I was like, what, how can we bring back the girl that spilled the hot chocolate? Because she was a better engineer, I felt like. Yeah.
Yeah. I could
Poor
not
girl.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, wait, hold on, this is funny. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says Data singing to her is the best bad part of this episode. I forgot that Data sings to her.
I don't remember the singing. I do remember that he's like, hi, honey, how was your day? Like and she's like, what are you doing, Data? This is too much. I'm like, but you said you wanted this. Like,
I just remember him being like, you're not my mother. And she goes, what did you just say to me? And he said, you are not my mother. That is the proper response to what you just said to me. And it was just like,
you did that so well.
Is he wrong? Is he wrong? Point out the lie, right? There was an episode, it was oh gosh, it was Instance of Command, the Shellyak episode where Data's sent to that planet to try to save these colonists from the Shellyak. And there's a scientist on that planet, Ardrian, who like kisses Data and then Data kisses her at the end. And like, it's really sweet. That relationship I love for Data because she knows he's a robot, but they have all these like points of connection. She's not trying to change him. He's not trying to change her. They just like each other the way they are. Like, I like that. That's
what Jenna was. She was trying to change him to fit her mold. And you can't do that.
And Data just kept changing. He was like, okay, I can change that too. Sure, change that too. Yep, no problem.
But then when she got that, she didn't want that. So it's like, so what the hell do you want, woman? Like, what do you want? What do you want?
Isn't that always the way? Right? When you try to change somebody to be more what you want, you change them so much you don't want them anymore because it's not the person you wanted. It is like by this age of all bad relationships.
Yeah, by this age, I think yes, this is like the distillation of all terrible relationships on Trek. I think at the end of the day, like we're all at an age that we now kind of understand you can't change someone. So you're with them because you like who they are, not what you think they should be or could be or what they could give you. And that's what she was in it for. She wanted it for what he could provide for her because she needed comforting after her boyfriend broke up with her. And after seeing this relationship, I'm like, I feel like I sort of know why your boyfriend broke up with you. I'm just saying, like,
well, she broke up with him because he was emotionally unavailable. So
did you though?
Counselor Troy, I think you got another patient.
Yeah. Go ahead and clear your schedule for this one, Deanna.
Wolfkinder 3 says, I've kissed some friends on the lips. There you go, Nadia. There's other people in the chat who've done that.
Nadia's like, I'm never going to live this down. We love you, Nadia. We love you. We love you.
Wolfkinder 3 says, Data started with his friend group. He started with his friend group and trying to like figure out the dating situation.
He did Tasha. He did this. Is a poor choice of words, but he had experiences with, okay, whatever.
I mean, they were convenient. Like, I get that. Was it the bestest choice? I don't know, but I get that. Randall says the Orville took the plot with their doctor. Oh, yes. Okay, so in the Orville, they have a doctor who's a human, and then they have a robot. It's not an android, it's a robot, like a straight up robot, like legit robot. It's like an AI
beep,
robot.
Boop, beep up. Okay.
Yes. It's like a Cylon, okay, but it looks like a robot, not like the human version. And the doctor hooks up with the robot. And what they do is they go into the holodeck, and then the holodeck gives the robot like a human look.
Okay. They lull him up. Okay.
So they lull him up, and so all of their dates are on the holodeck, where he's like looks like a human, and they also have sex on the holodeck. Don't ask me how.
Okay.
And this relationship is a thing. It like happens. How long did that relationship last for Randall? Wasn't it like a whole season of the two of them like madly in love, or at least she was madly in love because he was a robot? But yeah, they took this concept to like another level. It's super interesting.
I feel like the only robot that could actually have a relationship with anyone, and you'd have to be a real sociopath to be with them, is Bender from Futurama, because he's like just a sociopath that's really funny. So you have to kind of meet your match, but he could fall madly and toxically in love with someone and like have a whole, yeah.
Bender is the most emotional robot. There's this episode of Futurama. Now we're going to teach it. There's an episode of Futurama where they have this what if machine. And so each person keeps like asking a question. They're like, what if? And then like they do a whole skit of like whatever they
I need to watch
you
that.
have to see this episode, Andrea. You have to
need to watch this.
But there's this part where Bender does the what if machine and he says like, what if robots had emotion? Because there was this other scene where where they were talking about emotions and robots like, and Bender was like, you guys can't sit around talking about emotions in front of a robot. That's so rude because I don't have emotions and that makes me sad. Like, it's just like, it's so funny. Anyways, Wingrace says, I'll send people sweet messages for half the price. That's the price
right.
Of the just kissing on the lips.
No, the AI robot, the AI boyfriend messenger. Yeah, I would do that too.
Is that service expensive? Let me tell you, a brand actually reached out to me and was like, hey,
no idea, because I never clicked on it. I don't know.
A brand reached out to me and they were like, hey, we've seen your content. Like, we would love to work with you. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me check out what this is. And that's what it was. It was like an AI dating service. And I was like, I'm so sorry.
This is not the science fiction I was talking about, you guys.
It was science fiction-y because you could be in love with an elf lord for all you want. But I was like, this just doesn't. I was like, it doesn't really align with like what I'm doing. But best of luck because I feel like they're kind of hitting a jackpot, right? They're doing online dating with someone you could date
with something that's
exactly what you want
with your fantasy type, but
with your fantasy type.
They just created like
it's
date
like
Legolas from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, you're like, all right, well.
It's like the holodeck, but like on chat. So I was just like, I think they are positioned to do very well.
That actually
I'm just not going to participate.
That makes me, same. That makes me curious though, for like what the retention rate of subscribers that is. Like, do you just, if you're that lonely, do you just fall madly in love with your AI boyfriend and you keep paying forever? Or I mean, do you at some point realize
it's probably like $2.99 a month or like $30 a year? It's probably something that's like,
whatever,
not gonna drain your bank account because
but if I were super capitalistic, which I'm not, but if I were running something like that, I would do like a pay per message type thing. So the more infatuated you become, the more you have to like buy credits to like keep talking with them or something.
I'm glad that you're not in charge of it.
I'm just saying that's the maximizing profits way.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're not the only service. There's probably like a million other services. But that was my first time hearing of such a thing. So I'm sure we will all hear more about it probably by the end of next year.
Oh, I'm sure.
Everybody will know about it.
Everybody's going to be having marriage ceremonies with their elf lord boyfriend and stuff. It's going to be so weird.
But they're going to have the entire ceremony in Elvish. So we won't even know what's going on. Wingrace says, #capitalism. Nadia says, LOL, love you guys. Randall says Futurama was canceled by the networks and then brought back like 30 times.
That's right. Because it's amazing.
Yeah. So couple number 3. This comes from season 3, episode 14, A Matter of Perspective. And the couple is once again Riker, but this time with a married woman named Manua Apgar.
Ooh.
Yeah. This is the episode where it's like a little bit Groundhog's Day. We get the same scenes over and over and over, but from different perspectives. Yeah. And basically, Riker was flirting with this married woman who was flirting back with him. I think at one point they actually kiss and her husband walks in on them. And the husband's super jealous, totally understandable. And as Riker is beaming back to the Enterprise, the husband tries to like shoot him with a laser beam and kill him, but make it look like it was a transporter accident.
Yes.
But because he's like phased out too far, the beam bounces back and explodes the whole science station and kills him. But it looks like Riker murdered him in a jealous rage. So I will say Riker absolutely flirted with this married woman and kissed her. This married woman absolutely flirted with Riker and kissed him. But in both of their perspectives, it seems like they were each the innocent victim of the other.
Yes.
Which was
right, because in Manua's perspective, he was like ripping her dress off her shoulder, and I'm like,
he was that's on her.
Riker has always been attracted to strong women, strong people. He's always been, and he even said it. I don't know if it was in this episode or possibly another, but yeah, where he was like, I've only thank you. Oh my God, how did you?
It just came to me. It just, as we were talking, because we said this in the podcast episode, that in that episode, Yuta was like, I am your servant. I am your sex slave. Whatever I've been sent to please you. And he was like, I don't want that.
I don't want that. I want to be with a woman who wants to be with me, not I have to take her or like force her. Right. So like, it's just so against Riker's entire character. That whole episode was so gross.
However, flirting with a married woman is not at all against Riker's character. Like that was absolutely
which is unfortunate because it's pretty yucky. Yeah,
exactly. But like forcing himself on her does not align with the character he's written to be. We actually got a
No.
comment on that, Andrea, after that episode. One of our listeners was like, after listening to our reflection on Riker's character and how it was portrayed, this person was like, wow, you guys like just totally don't believe the victim. You just believe the victimizer or something like that. And I was like, well, actually, because, and they were saying like we were basically taking sides and victim shaming and all this stuff. And I was like, well, this is the reason why we would not be on the judge or the jury, because of the conflict of interest. There has to be value in knowing a person's character. There has to be. Like, otherwise, why am I working so hard on my reputation? If the second that literally anyone off the street accuses me of anything in the world, everyone believes them.
Yes.
Right? Like,
exactly.
What is the value of me having any integrity? What is the value of me having any effort or any investment in who I am if anyone could walk off the street and be like, she stole my wallet, and people are gonna be like, yep, she sure did. It's like, no, you need to like evaluate who the person is and be like, well, that doesn't sound like her. Okay, but maybe this other thing, okay, that sounds like her. You know, maybe because it's not like I'm perfect and can't do anything wrong, but it's the type of wrong. There's a type of wrong that aligns with who I am, and there's a type of wrong that doesn't align at all, right? And so I think that's kind of what this episode brought out, where it's like, would Riker flirt with a married woman? 1,000 times yes. I had zero problem believing that part of the episode. I was like, I'm sure this happened, and I'm sure they made out, and I'm sure he didn't feel bad about it, and I'm sure he was like, yeah, I'm the man. Like, I'm sure. But as far as
that's so funny.
I didn't off and being like, I'm gonna take you and you're gonna
Meanwhile,
like
in
like,
her version, he's ripping her dress off and she's like, no, please, I don't want this. It's like,
it's like, that doesn't align with who I think of him as a character.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't remember them kissing. I remember her saying
they kissed in his quarters. And then like the doors open.
In both their versions or just in her version?
In both their versions.
Oh.
I believe, like, I'm not going to rewatch the episode, of course, but I believe
they both it's terrible.
Do. And in Riker's version, she's throwing herself at him. And he's
throwing
like,
herself,
he's like, okay. But she's throwing herself. She's like she comes in and she locks the door or closes the door, and she's like very seductive, and she throws herself at him. And then in her version, he's like throwing him, he's forcing himself on her. But I think they kiss in both versions. Let me know in the chat if I'm getting that wrong, because I'm not
we might not be. No, it's just not worth it. There's so many good Trek episodes that don't need to watch the bad ones again. Let's just pretend they never happened, other than discussing the bad, relationships. But beyond that, we don't need to revisit that.
Yeah. So Nadia says, no way. I do not think Riker went so far with Manua kissing a married woman. Wolfkinder 3 says, I didn't think Riker actually flirted with her. I thought she either believed he was or just took advantage of the situation to get rid of her husband. She didn't know her husband was going to do that. She didn't know her husband was going to try to shoot him and that the laser would like bounce back. And
it was going to like rebound.
There was no way anybody could plan that. That's why it was such a hard trial for them to figure out what happened, because no one guessed, except for Data, that this entire situation, the scientist caused it himself by accident. He wasn't trying to kill himself. He was trying to kill Riker very specifically. Nadia says, exactly. I don't think he would kiss a married woman. I think he would kiss a married woman. He may have flirted a little bit, but in a way that comes naturally to him in his friendly way. Oh, he was flirting in a friendly way.
Flirting, sure.
Let me just tell any Rikers or female Rikers, someday when I have a spouse, don't friendly flirt with him that way. Like, I will feel some kind of way about that. If it's a friendly Riker flirt, I'm gonna feel some kind of way. And
you know what? I had
on my part, and I'm okay with that.
I had an old boyfriend over a decade ago there was one particular. He was friends with this guy from like childhood, and the guy had like married this woman, and my ex-boyfriend and this married woman would flirt, but they would like heavy flirt, like in front of us all, and it was like, what the heck is going on? Like, and I remember when I brought it up, I was like, I don't like whatever this is super weird. They kept making like overtly sexual comments where it was like, what? And the husband was like, oh, that's just how they always are. And I was fairly newly dating this guy, and I was like, yeah, this is a no. And you know what? They treated me like I was the crazy one. I was like, when we broke up, I was like, yeah, okay, that was so weird, dude. Like, you should never have done that. Like, maybe you and her flirt a lot when you're single or something, but she's not been single for a long time because she's married and all that stuff. And you're now with me, so that's just, the whole thing was so gross. So yeah, I agree. Like the friendly flirting thing, like when you're with someone, don't do that. That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, and I did have this thought, specifically about this episode. I've had this thought many times, that unless you're in an open relationship or some other configuration of relationship other than male, female, married, right? Any other thing from that, because that's like kind of the only thing we have in TNG. It's just like any couple is like male, female, and then it's like they're married.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
there's, you know, like a throuple or like some polyamory or like an open relationship, any of that stuff, I'm totally fine with.
Yeah,
On
for sure.
Assuming everyone's on the same page.
Yes,
So
yes.
if Dr. Apgar and his wife were like, oh yeah, we just kind of like hook up with other people from time to time. We're cool with like, he knows,
Cool.
she knows, like we're cool with it. Then I'm cool with it. But if you agree
It's the
that we are
deception.
monogamous, then yeah, now you're cheating. And that's messed up, right? Like now you're just
Not
now
okay.
you're just being hurtful. But if you're
Yes,
all
yeah.
on the same page and if it's all open and out in the open and we've all agreed, I have no problems with
Then
it.
go to
Because you're
town.
not exactly because you're not
Yeah.
betraying anyone's trust.
Yeah.
You all agreed on this and you're cool
It's
with
the
it.
trust. It's
So-
the trust. That's it right there. Also, like lots of open relationships have lots of rules around them too, where it's like you can only do X, Y, and Z if I'm in the room, or if
Present
it's
or
right
whatever,
where it's
yeah.
like there's a whole sort of understanding.
There's still some levels of trust there.
Yes,
not
there's
just
levels
like-
of trust, right? But like I always scroll around Reddit at night before I fall asleep just because I love seeing like what's out there. And one of the Reddits that like I'm part of is the advice subreddit. And there's a lot of like, oh, my wife and I have an open relationship, but I've caught her like secretly hooking up with someone else. And it's like, see that right there, that's not,
because then you're
that's
like,
a betrayal of
having an
trust.
open relationship if you're going to be, yeah, it's like, okay, well
Yeah.
then you don't want to be in a relationship. Maybe we just date. Maybe we
Yeah.
don't live together. Maybe we don't share
Totally.
bills.
Totally.
Maybe we don't have kids together.
Maybe we
just
wow. Charisse knows how to keep the romance alive. Maybe we share bills.
No, I said maybe we don't share bills.
Oh,
right?
okay, okay.
And there's trust. Like there's like if I can't
Yeah.
trust you, if I can't trust you to keep your word in something so important,
Yeah.
I probably can't trust you to like pay the electric bill on time. Something that's like not as important as that.
Can't.
But like you
Nope.
can't even keep the big thing. You're probably not going to keep the little things. You're probably not going to
Yes.
pick me up in the airport on time.
Yes.
Even like just like
Agree.
now, I probably can't trust you with anything. But
Yeah.
that's just me. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says Riker flirted for sure. Some part of every recreation was true. I think there's enough evidence there to show that Riker was into it up to a point. Okay, so from what
Agreed.
I'm hearing everyone saying in the chat, we're not 100% sure they ever actually kissed. Is what I'm interpreting, is that everyone's version is different. But there was some flirting that we can agree probably happened. Windgrace says, yes, this episode was so great that they had to make it again with Tom Paris. They absolutely made this exact episode minus the laser part. But the whole thing with Tom flirting with the married woman and then the husband dies. Well, in this case, the wife had a lover and the lover killed the husband and they framed Tom Paris because she was flirting with Tom. So they framed Tom as like, he killed my husband because he's secretly in love with me. Yeah, it was, I want to say it was a good episode, but in most ways it was this exact episode.
Sounds like something Loxana would say. He killed my husband because he's so in love with me. And now Natty is typing, Andre really hates Loxana. That sounds like a hilariously bad episode. I kind of want to watch that, the Tom Paris one.
I really like that episode.
Is it? It's better than this one by a lot.
Yes, it is, because it's not an accident, and the fact that like the wife was in on it.
Yeah.
It's a murder mystery. Exactly, it's a murder mystery, and at the end, the fact the wife is in on it is like a nice little twist. It wasn't just like this episode where you're really like, what is going on? Nadia says, I was about to type that. So you called it.
Gotcha.
So couple number 2 comes from season 7, episode 14, Sub Rosa. And that's right. This is episode
Thank you.
number 2. It's not couple 1, which you would think from the thumbnail. It's couple 2. And the couple is Beverly and Ronan, the green sexy ghost. So in this episode, which I feel like I mentioned this episode every single time I do a live stream because it's so iconic, but Beverly goes to this colony for her grandmother's funeral and ends up hooking up with her grandmother's 30-year-old lover, who ends up being
who lives in a candle, like the woman who lives in a shoe.
Yeah, he's not the candle like Beauty and the Beast. He just lives in the candle, like he's part of the flames. And anyways, he can sometimes become corporeal, and they have this really passionate fling until he becomes murderous. And then she has to get rid of him with a phaser and blast him into nothingness. Come to find out, he's kind of like a parasitic entity, this alien who's been feeding off of her family for generations and generations. In return, he gives them really steamy sexual encounters secretly, I'm guessing, because all these women were married to continue to have kids. So that's that. This couple is weird. It's weird. In my opinion, super weird. Andrea, your thoughts on Beverly and Ronan? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. I just realized. I mean, I can't say enough bad things about this couple. It's not, first of all, it's not a couple, it's a parasitic relationship, right? It's a manipulation of
Yeah.
a woman who is
I was gonna
in
say
deep
she's getting something
grief.
in return. He's not just taking, but you're right. It's absolutely manipulation. She
It's a
didn't
manipulation.
necessarily
She didn't know, like,
choose it
yeah, she
100%.
didn't really choose it. It just kind of happened to her, and then she got like
He
addicted to
chemically
it, right?
altered her. Yeah, that
Yes,
wasn't like,
yes,
yeah,
to make her,
he
yeah,
tricked
it's
her. He
like an
tricked her into
addict
thinking he was a real
situation.
person.
Is I'm sorry. Win Grace just said Beverly Crusher is still a better ghost writer than Nicolas Cage. We're gonna need a moment. Win Grace, you're on fire tonight. We are sorry, we're just dying over here. Oh my god, it's so true. That's right. It's so bad and it's so good. That was so perfect. Okay, well now my face is gonna hurt from what. Thank you, Win Grace. That was ridiculously good. Oh my god. Okay. That was
Poor Nicolas Cage.
He's like, what did I do? Oh my god.
In this conversation. Oh my
Okay,
god.
so-
Ooh, that
so
gave
yes,
my abs
I
a
mean-
workout. Thank you for that.
Oh my god, like when I
Better than
laugh
Quentin.
really, really hard, my back starts to hurt, and now my back really hurts. So thank you for that. Oh, that was so that we were laughing for like 10 minutes, girl. Okay, so yes, my thoughts on like it's not a relationship, it's not a couple, it's just it's like a drug addiction and manipulation. But the whole thing is so creepy. What makes it, it's not, it would have been creepy if it was just like this ghost that lives in a freaking candle, right? Like that's not real, right? But the fact that like he was like her grandmother's lover and great grandmother's lover, that goes back like 900 years of crushers or whatever. It's like, ew. What? I mean, it can't be 900 years of Crusher because that was Jack Crusher's last name, not Beverly's. But whatever her
Yeah,
family name
her
is.
family line. Yeah. She
Yeah,
does say it
it's
in the
just
episode,
the
but I don't
whole.
remember.
It's
Mhm.
just. I'm sorry. I don't want to have ghost sex with my grandmother's lover. Like that's so
We don't want to
gross.
kink shame, but
Well,
we are
that one
going
I will
to.
kink shame because seriously, what are you doing? Like that one I will. Like I will. What do you do? You can't. No. And like you
And
know
it's not
what
like
was.
he changed anything. He didn't like change his appearance or pretend to be someone else. He was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally the one from those diaries." Oh yeah. You're
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Your face is like for real.
yeah, you could have just pretended to be literally anybody. You're
Also,
a ghost.
also the part of the episode that creeps me out even more than the like sensual green smoke that surrounds her and she starts having
Yes,
her the
and
game
enters her
reactions
body.
over.
Yeah.
Yes. The thing that's even creepier is when they decide, like when they on the Enterprise were like, hey, let's like exhume the body of the grandmother and see if there's any of this like cell pattern
Yeah.
damage or whatever to see,
Yeah.
and when they dig up the body, Ronan like enters the
Reanimates
body
the
of the
body.
dead grandma and she's like, it's okay, Beverly. I'm like, no.
Reanimate the corpse touches Geordi and Data
Howard,
and
that was
zaps
her name.
them, and they both fall down. And then
Ugh.
Beverly's like, no, and she's like,
Yeah.
it's okay, Beverly, and she's like, leave Nana alone. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this got so creepy so fast, like more
Yeah.
creepy in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a fan. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says, at least there was genuine love with the candle ghost. It was chemically induced love. But you can say that like Beverly was into it. She was definitely for sure into it. And I know after she blasted him away, who knows how much therapy with Counselor Troy she had to do, or like hypo sprays she had to design to like readjust her brain. And then
I would never light a candle again.
which you don't even need them on the Enterprise. But yeah, I agree. I never would. And I like candles. And I would be so mad that
I have candles everywhere all the time.
Of my life. I saw your little ghost candles on Instagram. They're cool.
Thanks. Fun.
So Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, I missed the first two on the list, but I sure hope Deanna and Devanani Rawl are number one.
You know what? I think you have Devanani Rawl, but I think you might have skipped it.
I skipped one, and the one I skipped was Deanna and Devanani Rawl.
Yeah, with the wormhole for sale. which
Oh,
is a weird sentence to even say.
hold on. That's because I scrolled too far.
I think it's
Oh,
number
it
9
was
on your
episode
list.
number 9. Yeah,
Yeah.
I skipped it like immediately. Episode number 9. This is gonna be hilarious in the timestamps. People are gonna be like, those numbers aren't. The math isn't mathing.
It's a journey. Yeah.
Couple number 9 on the list comes from season 3, episode 8, The Price, and that is Devanani Rall and Troy. And in this episode, Devanani Rall is a negotiator. They're all trying to buy this stable wormhole or access to the stable wormhole. And Devanani he's part Beta Z, which is a secret, and he uses his empathy to manipulate all the other delegates and out negotiate them all. And Troy ends up falling for him, I guess because they're both Beta Z or something. And then he confides in her and says, "Hey, just so you know, I've been using my special superpower to manipulate all the other delegates so that I will win." And she goes, "That's messed up. Like, that's wrong." And he's like, "How is that wrong?
Like
you literally do that every single day for Captain Picard. How is it different?" And she was like, "Well, I'm doing it for the greater good." Yeah, she really can't answer that question. Yeah. But that relationship ends up falling apart on that idea. He does end up winning the wormhole contract, but we come to find out that it's unstable, and so it was just all a big waste. Andrea, thoughts on this couple?
I hate how he pushes her even though she says no a bunch of times. Like they meet for this little date, right? Because like he looks at her with those giant baby blue eyes of his and she's immediately taken by him, right? And they end up meeting later for dinner or whatever. And he gives her that most sensual lice check of the universe, right? Where he's like combing through her and she's kind of doing this thing where she's like sort of leaning away from him and she's uncomfortable and he keeps touching her hair. Like the whole thing was just really yucky.
It was weird.
He knows what he's doing is wrong with this. He's using manipulative tactics to gain the advantage in this wormhole negotiation. And he knows what he's doing is wrong. So when confronted with it, he starts doing the like, well, what will you do it too? It's like, no, what Troy does is very different. What she says is, Captain, I'm sensing that this, person is hiding something.
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
I knew you were going to say that. Right. But like, she'll be like, I noticed that this adversary, he's lying about something. Right. But she's not like, and here's how we use that to advantage to put him at a disadvantage. It's just it's part of her job to ensure not just Captain Picard's moves are the right moves, but also the safety of the entire crew. Devanani Rall is doing it solely for profit. And that's messed up. And he knows what he's doing is wrong, which is why he gets defensive, I think. He's just a creep overall. A beautiful man, though. I don't know who that actor is, but he's gorgeous. And they cast like those
like beautiful blue eyes with the dark hair, right? And the like smoky scenes where the background's always darkened and he's like,
and his eyes are all light. Yeah. He's got
he's got the guy liner on that makes his eyes pop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Everything about it is beautiful. But yeah, the whole character is just creepy.
Terrible. Super ugly.
The character is terrible. Yeah. But now we're going to jump from number 9 to number 1.
Exactly. You're welcome. Yeah. So Devanani Rall and Troy, like, what? Yes, this was a terrible relationship, especially for Troy, because I feel like he also manipulated her.
Yes.
He played on her emotions so that way she somehow was like, and she even said in the episode something like, "I'm strangely attracted to you," or like, "I'm drawn to you and I don't know why," or whatever. And then eventually he's just like, "Yeah, because I'm empathetic and da da da." It's like, and she was just like, "I don't hide that about myself. Why are you hiding it?" And I think that's the other thing, is that you're hiding it because you're being deceptive with it. And Troy is not hiding it because she's used, like, everyone knows. Maybe the enemy doesn't know because they don't know anything about anybody on the ship. But she's not like being sneaky in order to trick anyone. She's not trying to trick anyone. She'll say it with the view screen open. Captain, he's lying. Like,
yes,
you know what I mean? She's not trying to be tricky. So I do think they are using the same power. And I would say he's maybe not only using it for himself, because he was purchasing this wormhole for his people, whoever he's representing. So like, maybe there is a greater good in his mind on his side as well. But there is something about the way that he's doing things that is very manipulative, regardless of if he's using his empathy or just being kind of a dick. So checking in on the chat, Nadia says, best of Trek, worst of Trek. I know Rall and Troy were ghastly in all caps.
They were.
Told you earlier that the actor Matt Malloy is talented, but the character was badly written and creepy AF.
Yeah.
And Nadia also says Nicolas Cage would respond with, "I'm outraged." Walk into this conversation.
Such a good one.
Oh, Wingrave says her maiden name is Howard. Howard. That's
Yes,
what it was. When we
yes,
were
the
like,
Howard
we
women.
kept
That's
saying that.
right.
Yeah, I was like, she said it. I don't remember what it was. Randall says a particularly erotic passage of my grandmother's journal, and then says real dialogue that sounds like something in a meme.
That's so true.
A particularly erotic passage of my grandmother's journal. You're absolutely right. That
This is
does
why I
sound like
don't keep a
something in
journal. I
real
don't
life.
want people reading about this. Okay. Ridiculous.
Best of Trek, worst of Trek says the scene where he plays with her hair is so cringy
Yeah.
and the worst music cue in the entire franchise. Yeah,
Oof.
the lice check. It was just like he's just pulling apart her hair and just digging into it, and she's like,
Which as a fellow curly-haired person, don't do that.
Not your
It's just
thing,
a
right?
frizz nightmare waiting to happen.
Not your thing. Not super hot.
Yeah.
Nadia says, no, that part where he greases up her feet.
Oh, that's right. He gives her a foot massage with like a lot of oil.
Oh,
Way too much oil.
I'm so sad that memory just came back into my head. Thanks, Nadia.
Yeah, your face. I wish we had like a free.
I was
Okay,
like,
if
what?
you replay, go back like 30 seconds and watch Charisse and just pause because the face is. You're horrified.
Talk about
Horrified.
memes. Wingrace says, and then we have the completely plot required workout scene with Troy and Beverly in the hallway.
Yeah.
And then Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says the price would have been good if not for the romance.
Yes. Yes. The
Yeah, 'cause it was
A plot
interesting with
was
the
great. It's this
wormhole.
wormhole for sale. Everybody's negotiating and trying to one up each other and trying blah, 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 and then to
It would have
discover
been
that the
interesting.
wormhole is not stable. A great storyline. A great storyline.
'Cause it would have been like all these like you know, all these deceptions and like who's telling the truth and having to watch people
Right.
outmaneuver each other. That could have been super interesting.
That would have
But
been great. Yeah.
I was
So I
completely
think
distracted by this though.
this train wreck. Yeah. But I think Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, that's an excellent, excellent point. It was a great episode outside of that hideous romance. Yeah.
Which brings us to couple number 1 on the list, which comes from season 6, episode 3, Man of the People. And this train wreck couple is Counselor Troy and Ambassador Alcar. Right, like half of them are Troy and half of them are Riker. I think there was one Beverly and one Picard. So, and one Data. Okay, all the rest are Troy and Riker.
Yeah.
And I cut a lot of Troy and Riker out, by the way.
Yeah.
So this is the episode where Troy, where basically this Ambassador Alcar comes on the ship with his mother, and the Enterprise has to take him on this peacekeeping mission to negotiate a truce between these two warring worlds. And then his mother dies. So Troy agrees to help him with like the grieving process and touch their funeral stones together. And he transfers something to Troy, and suddenly Troy becomes a completely different person. She becomes really angry and aggressive and unpredictable and loud and violent. She also becomes extra sexy. She starts dressing like her mom, but the gothic version. So she's kind of doing an Elvira situation or like a Morticia Adams. And she starts hooking up with all these people on the ship. And then she gets really old really fast, and then she dies. So Alcar breaks his connection with her because she died, and he finds another victim to touch funeral stones with, and they beam the victim away just in time, and all the juices flow back onto him, and he dies. He like instantly dies. He mummifies. It's kind of like, it reminds me of Indiana Jones.
Yes.
Like where he's just like, yeah, it's like he died real fast, and everybody's like, good riddance. At least I was. And then they revive Counselor Troy, and she comes back to life
on the brink of death. Yeah.
Yeah. They killed her with some like they hyposprayed her with something.
Some chemical, yeah.
Actually kill her so that he would break the connection. And they hyposprayed her with something else to bring her back. And come to find out that he's been using women as receptacles for all of his unpleasant thoughts and emotions for hundreds of years. We don't know.
And then the fact that they call them receptacles. Ugh.
Yeah. This was the worst couple in TNG out of a list of easily 60 terrible couples, because Alcar is just the worst. He's a monster. And how many receptacles has he just left in his path? We don't even know. We just saw what happened to the last one.
Probably hundreds.
Right? Yeah, and then he even says something to Picard when they figure all this out and Picard confronts him. He says something like, most of my receptacles last much longer. I'm surprised that she's like not lasting as long because she's a different species from him. So she goes through the process in a matter of like hours. Yeah. Whereas the other ones take, I guess, years. So he's been doing this. How many bodies has he left in his wake? We don't know. But anyways, Andrea, your thoughts on this couple?
This episode reminds me, I find this episode and this relationship to be really fascinating because I did love to see the like aggressive sexification of Deanna as she comes out. Like she's got the one streak of gray hair and she comes to 10 forward, like all done up, slightly Loxana-ish in that like she's wearing a beautiful tight dress, but like her boobs are kind of out, right? She's got her hair up, and even Riker's like, Deanna, like I've never seen you looking like this, right? Like I love that Marina Sirtis got to like play with the role of Troy, but in like a more like femme fatale look than like a sweet doe-eyed, you know, do-gooder kind of sweetheart. But yeah, the way that this ambassador uses his women and he calls them receptacles is just so disgusting. It reminds me of the picture of Dorian Gray, which is that story of like this man who has a painting made of him and the painting ages, but he never does. And the painting kind of takes on all the negative stuff in his life and he just stays youthful and beautiful. And the rule is like, you can never look at the painting. And one day he sees the painting and they swap places and the painting becomes young and beautiful and he shrivels up and dies like a mummy. So this ambassador, it's very much like a similar story. And it's like, how many hundreds of years old are you? Because you've just been dumping all your aging and your grief and your anxiety and depression and anger and lust and all this stuff into these receptacles and then going on your merry way with your head held high, like you're doing something good for the people. And that was the thing that killed me
the whole time.
That made him one of the most punchable faces in Star Trek for me, because when Captain Picard was like, she's dying, he's like, well, that's unfortunate. I'm needed because I'm so important. I was like, ew, somebody stop him. So yeah, it was just really gross, but I did love to see Deanna get to like play that femme fatale. That I was very entertained by that episode. I liked it a lot, but it was so gross. Super gross.
One of the things you mentioned when we reviewed this episode on the TNG podcast is you said that you had wished that in them showing Troy, you know, getting all of these negative emotions, that they wouldn't have focused so much on her becoming sexy. Because you don't think sexiness is negative.
It's right? Not negative. Yeah.
But that's exactly the direction they went in. Like there's a scene in that episode
lust.
There's a scene in that episode where she's like working out in the gym and she's like stretching or whatever. And as the transformation starts to take place, she starts like moaning and like bending all sexy and all that stuff. And that's to show us that she's like transforming. And so you're kind of like, is she just getting really horny or like what's going on? And then
she's just feeling lusty.
Like, super tight stuff. And you're like, okay. And then she starts getting like really violent and stuff like that. And then you're like, oh, wait, there's like a lot going on here.
Something seriously wrong.
Yeah. And I remember you saying like, I just wish it wasn't led with the idea that lust is lumped in with any negative feeling,
like
negative
hatred and jealousy. Yeah. It feels very much a product of the writing times where like, sexiness in men, you're a player. Sexiness in women, that's a bad thing.
You're bad. Yeah. And I think I did read something about this today though, where it said Alcar, instead of dumping all his negative emotions, I think that's how he describes in the episode, like all of my negative emotions or whatever. But the way they described in this thing I was reading was something like all of his distracting and unhelpful emotions. And I was like, oh, that's a better way to put it, because then lust, yes, would absolutely make sense, because that's going to be distracting in a negotiation. Like that makes more sense than all of his. This makes more sense than the skin of evil with Armis, who killed Tasha Yar, right? Where it was like they just shed every evil thing and it became me. Like this makes more sense to say, instead of I dump all my badness into a receptacle, and the badness includes lust or sexuality in any way or in its biggest forms. Instead to say like anything that's unhelpful to negotiations. So being super happy, being super sad, being anxious, like any wide ranging emotions of any kind, those all get dumped in. So I can just be like even keeled and neutral. That actually makes more sense. Hold on. I'm checking the chat. Imagine, so Wind Grace says, imagine if when Voyager followed up on this story, they only continued the romance. Which story? Are we talking about the Man of the People? Are we talking about the manual thing? Are we talking about the Tom Paris with the married woman? Because stuff has been going on in the chat. So just remind me, Wind Grace, of what you're talking about. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, the weird fisheye cameras, the nightgown that leaves nothing to the imagination. Not sure how that got by the censors. And Keller's still in there. Is that the Keller still in there? Is that the is that when the like sentient sand is like blasting away? I don't know. I lost that. I lost that reference. Let me know what that is about.
First officer's log. This man is screaming to death. And I'm gonna stop and take a log now. It could be hours.
Let's get him to sick bay. What? You did a log before sending him to sick bay? He didn't make it. Of course he didn't make it.
Steaming, Therese. Like, and they're like, hold on, I need to make a log.
First
Yeah.
officer's log. This guy just got shot. And he's steaming right now.
You know what? This is why you're the first officer and not the captain, because a captain would know to wait. Okay? Silliness.
Wolfkinder 3 says, was he human or a different species? Alcar was a different species. Let me see if I wrote down what his species was.
No, Best of Trek, Worst of Trek said Lumerian.
Yes, that's what he was. He was Lumerian. Yeah,
Space vampire is perfect though, Randall. That's exactly what that is.
He was, but not the sexy kind of vampire. He was just like a regular, boring looking person. They would never let him into the vampire guild. He did not have enough personality. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says Keller's still in there is when Riker's mind is being invaded by Alcar. He keeps reliving an order that he gave and killed someone named Keller.
Oh, that's right. Do you remember the creepy guy? Like it was like this like flashback kind of like false memory Riker was having, and it kept being
Alcar did that to him. How the heck did he do that?
I don't know if it was Alcar. Was it?
Or was it Jev? Was it from the episode?
I think it was Jev. Because they're like, he's still in there. You killed him. That's Keller.
Okay, so that's
episode, why I was like, that's not Alcar, that's Jev. And the space memory people.
Yeah,
with
that
with
was
the braids
called,
like this.
Violations.
Thank you.
And that was the episode where Jev came and like messed with Troy and Riker and Beverly and put them all into comas and then was finally caught at the end. That did not make the list because because I said at the top of the hour, I'm just going to repeat it for anyone who's joining now. Hello. That did not make the list because any time where Counselor Troy was assaulted did not make the list of couples for me. So Jev is not on the list. And any other time something crazy happened, the closest we have on this list is Devonani Rawl, who did not assault Troy. He manipulated her, similar to Beverly and Ronan or Alcar and Troy. A lot of people in Troy, where it was like not a full-on assault, but it was not the way the relationship unfolded was not 100% mutual, right? It wasn't like we both know what's going on. That's not what was going on with either Troy and Alcar or Beverly and Ronan. We did not all know what was going on. One of us knew everything that was going on. The other one of us was kind of like surprised in a bad way. So yeah, Nadia says that was Alcar. That wasn't Alcar. That was Jev. And Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says you're right. The mind assault episodes run together.
I agree. It does that for me too.
Run together.
They kind of all run together for me too. I totally
and Nadia
get that.
says the same thing. She says I confuse the two of them all the time because Troy,
because of this,
terrible situations. Yeah. So that is my list. I know that Andrea, you have a couple of honorable mentions. So go for it.
I do. So, this is one of my top ones. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't bring up Worf and Troy, and I'm actually kind of curious why you did mention them, but it wasn't on your like list. And like, that's not even on like one of my honorable mentions, but I'm just surprised you didn't bring that.
Was it on your list? Was it on your regular list?
It was on my regular list. And I was like, oh, for sure. This is going to be like one of the first ones Charisse brings up. And you didn't. I was like, I'm actually really surprised. Did you think of them? And then is there a reason why you did not include them on the top 10?
I did think of them. I had a list of probably 60 different couples, hookups, boyfriend, girlfriend, situationships on my list. And like I said, most of them were Troy. Or Riker. So I had Troy and almost everybody in the cast. And then I had Riker, and so one of those was Troy and Worf. I did not like them as a couple. However, I disliked everyone on the list a lot more. So if I had to pick 10, if I had to pick only 10, they were not in the top 10. Okay. Maybe they're in the top 30. Maybe they're in the top 20. I don't know. But they were not in the top 10 couples where when I think about them, I'm just like, this is horrible. Like when I think of Data and Jenna, I'm just like,
that's trash. Yeah.
When I think about Worf and Troy, I'm just like, I don't know how long this relationship would last, but it doesn't bother me.
I could actually see. I think the reason that all of us were put off by it, for the most part, all of us, is when that episode aired, it just seemed to come out of nowhere, right? It was that episode where he's going into parallel dimensions and realities, right? So in one reality, he's married to Troy, right? I don't think they would end up getting married, but I could see them having almost like kind of like the friends with benefits he thinks she has with Riker, because Worf by season 7 has mellowed a lot. Like season 1, Worf was so freaking rough, but by season 7, he's now had this kid. He's learned how to be a father. Things have kind of mellowed a
And
lot.
honestly, he's only learned how to be a father because Deanna has helped him.
Because
and
right, so
like
they have
there's and a mother, so they kind of have
she's already promised to be like, you know, Alexander's godmother. So there is there is like groundwork laid that like could turn into a relationship. So I'm not actually super mad at that. Like they are very different, but you know.
Yeah. So I can't say I didn't like them. I just was surprised. I was surprised by it more than anything.
I have a couple honorable mentions, not too many because I know we're way over time. One is Picard and Vosh. They are look at that.
I looked at the time and I was like,
yeah, we've been talking.
I didn't realize.
You're like, we're gonna keep it to an hour. So it looks
maybe
like we're
45 minutes.
Yeah. So Picard and Vosh, because
you thought was one of the worst couples. You're always on team Picard and Vosh.
Well, I love them as a fling. They're really fun. But as a long-term couple, that would be a disaster. She is everything Picard hates. Dishonest. She's a con artist. She's a liar. She's a thief. She gets off on like turning people against each other, like all that kind of stuff. Picard's
you know who she is?
She's Q without the powers.
She is, or she's Vigo. like Justin Vigo or whatever his name was, Jason Vigo. Picard's wayward son, who's not really his son, who's like Aladdin, right? Who stole a loaf of bread, and he was all like, "I don't know if I can accept him. I don't know if I can accept him as my son. He stole a loaf of bread when he was starving. I don't know." But with Vosh, she's all like, "Woo!"
Yeah, it's all a good time. I mean, because she's hot as hell. I mean, she's so beautiful, right? She's also got those big blue eyes, right? Yeah. She's exciting, right? So she's in Cupid and Captain's Holiday. I just think as a fling, it's hot and sexy and fun and steamy. And as a long-term relationship, it's like, please, I feel like Vosh could turn into a stalker. I don't know. Like it's just, also she could very well not, because she's so independent. She's like, whatever, I've got treasure to plunder on the other side of the quadrant. Whatever, peace out.
I could see her not becoming a stalker. I could see her leaving him in the middle of the night, like literally the middle of the night. He wakes up.
That actually makes more sense.
And he's like, why is there just a Horgon here where Vosh used to be? Not even a Dear John note on a note data pad. She's just out
under the covers on her side of the bed. So he goes to roll over, just grabs the Horgon. Yeah, so that's one of my honorable mentions. This one was actually really disappointing to me. Troy and Thomas Riker. Because when we got Thomas Riker in Second Chances, which I believe is season 6, episode 24, that's the one where, you know, Riker was the last to beam out of the station that was in peril, and like these clouds closed in. So his pattern like bounced onto the clouds and back down into, so he's lived 7 years in isolation, and he's dreamed of Deanna all this time because he was supposed to meet her on Risa, where the real William like didn't meet her and chose his career and didn't even WhatsApp her and just the right? She was all heartbroken for years until they served together on the Enterprise
cafe. Oh wait.
Yeah. Oh, so stupid. But the reason that this bums me out is because we really got our hopes up that we got to see like a Riker Troy relationship. You know, she got to explore like the what if for her, and guess what? The what if turned out exactly like the what happened. Which is like, so I've got a chance to be on this ship. I could be back in this sector in the next 9 months if you want to wait for me. And she's like, I've already done that. I've already done that trip down like disaster lane, and I just don't want to do that again. Like it just makes me sad because like we got our hopes up, and we also got to see Deanna kind of get her heart broken again, and that's a bummer. And then
same dude.
By the same dude. And then my third worst couple is Geordi with any woman. I mean, Dr. Leah Brahm, the Coco Nono girl with Aquiel. I mean, do we even?
My third worst couple is Geordi and anyone.
And any woman, anybody is just so, except for in the Nth Degree. Was it the Nth Degree where like Geordi confidence, and then suddenly he's like suave with Coco Nono girl, and suddenly it's Coco CC, right? Where it's like, this is okay. Spanish joke.
Yeah.
Coco CC, right? But my least favorite of the Geordis is the Aquiel one, because he's got this, like, he's investigating her for a murder, and it turns out her dog did the murder because it's a coalescent being. So that's really stupid.
It's always the last one you guess.
And it was like a golden retriever, like the friendliest of all dogs or something. It's just like, Jesus Christ.
They didn't have the nerve.
Couldn't have been like a Rottweiler with like a missing eye or something. Like it was
could have been a Chihuahua. They could have gone any direction with that.
Literally,
they were just like, but that one. They were just like, who brought their dog to set today?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah.
You, Jim. Jim, you're up.
Yeah. He's like, but it's a golden doodle. Doesn't matter who. But like, so the thing with Aquil too is Aquil is a very flat character. Jordy has such poor like character development in terms of like dating. So it's just the cherry on the icing on the shit cake when he is like, when he is, sorry, my language, but when he's like now going for this, he's falling in love with a woman he's investigating for murder. Like it's just so dumb. It's so unprofessional. It's so many things. Like also, if he had feelings for her, he could have recused himself. You know what I mean? There were like a lot of different stops that could have stopped, but it just kept going. But I'd love to know your thoughts.
The kind of weird part about that too is that when they find
Everything.
Aquil,
Yeah.
the kind of weirder part about all of that is when they find Aquil and she discovers that Jordy's been going through all her personal logs to try to find her and stuff. And she realizes that Jordy has a crush on her based on her diary. And she goes, let's go hang out in 10 Forward. Like that's the part where it'd be like, I don't know if that is a reasonable reaction for any person to have.
Yes.
I would be like, thank you so much for trying to find me. And you read what? I'm sorry. Okay. Well,
yeah, all my personal logs.
I'm going to be in my quarters petting my dog. Right. I'm not going to be like going on a date with you. You fell in love with me from my diary. Like,
that's so, yeah. So I feel like both of them are really clumsy. So I think really why the Aquil one to me ranks as an honorable mention is because it's a missed opportunity for Jordy's development. Like his character arc in terms of romance is often portrayed as one of like yearning and loneliness and like he wants a relationship, but it's just so clumsy about it, right? And like this Aquil thing could have been like an opportunity for growth, but instead it's just like yet another failed romance. And it's a bummer. And it just kind of continues this like chain reaction of just like poor love life choices and unsuccessful, awkward
connections.
Yeah.
Remember there's that episode, and I don't remember what it is. Somebody will probably remember in the chat, but there was that episode where there was that one engineer who had a big crush on Jordy and he was so not into her. And Data kept being like, you want me to tell her?
She's a catch. Yeah.
Do you remember that? And we were like,
yeah.
I remember when we reviewed that episode, I was like, what's his problem? She actually likes you. This is different from all the other women you've been interested in. Like, she's an engineer. She's smart. She likes you.
She's cute. She's smart. She's funny. She's fun. She's independent. She's an engineer.
At least have a Coco Nono with her. I mean, like, just at least she's just like, oh, she has a crush on me. Ugh. Like, he just has women just throwing themselves at all day long. He has no time
who do you think you are, Riker? Like, calm down. You have like, never had a woman have a crush on you.
Yeah, she could have been a terrible match, but the point is, you didn't even give it a chance. Yeah, but you fell in love with Aquil from her journal, from her diary entries. Like,
which, by the way, we're not even going to go into how creepy those diary entries were. Remember, it's like I had the dream again where he's chasing me. It was just like it was just so cringy.
They weren't,
but I guess Jordy's really cringy.
Fall in love with somebody.
They could have been living in cringe heaven because they both were really cringy characters, but yet again, it was just this like awkward stumbling block of like social awkwardness and crossing. Like Jordy is this like consummate professional as an engineer, yet he crosses those lines with like Leah Brahms by creating that, you know, invasive like holodeck program and all that.
Program. I had problems with him flirting with the holodeck program and trying to make dates with the holodeck program and kissing the holodeck program, but creating the program I was okay with. It just kind of spiraled.
The program was created out of necessity anyway, because it's like we need to work this problem. Right. I need the creator of the engines to do right. But like, yeah, so he went too far with it. Just and then and then in Galaxy's Child, when Leah Brahms actually discovers the program, she has every right to be outraged. You know, like she has every right. So like Jordy, you would think he would be this consummate professional, but he crosses a lot of lines that I think anybody would know not to cross in terms of love life stuff. But I think it's part of that yearning and longing that he just sort of can't help himself. I don't know. Poor Jordy with anyone is a terrible couple. Poor guy.
Somebody said something. Somebody commented on one of these videos about like Barclay and like his holodeck shenanigans.
Those are terrible too.
And then they were like, oh, but Jordy wasn't that much better. And then they said there just needs to be a whole retraining in engineering.
We need a retraining in security. We need a sexual harassment in engineering. We need one of those lab safety where you don't carry your hot chocolate in engineering. Like all those things need to be revisited. All of those things. Yeah.
Shoes.
Yes. You know, somebody came in with flip-flops one day and got plasma on their foot or something.
And now they have no foot.
Well, you know, do you remember in All Good Things Part 1 where we have the flash forward and Geordi is talking about no, sorry, this is in Picard where Geordi's talking about like he's got some kid, he's got a daughter and a whatever. And I was like, Geordi, do you have you're so awkward with any woman. Like you're not You're not.
He does in All Good Things, and then in Picard. He does get married and have 2 or 3 kids. So
No, he
eventually
doesn't.
it works
No,
out
he
for him.
doesn't. Nobody's going to talk to him. He's terrible with every
His
woman.
daughter is in Picard season 3, so at least
That's
the daughter is a
true.
real thing. And she does mention her family, and I think they even have like a comm call at one point. So they exist.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So he just took him a minute to find his person, but he found his person. So I'm going to check the chat, and then we are going to wrap it up. So Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, great picks. TNG really did relationships badly as a whole. I agree. I agree. Nadia is going to catch the replay because it is now 11 p.m. on the East Coast.
Sorry, Nadia.
I make no apologies. Wolfkinder3 says, imagine trying to date on a ship with 1,000 people. Worf says to Guinan in one episode, there really isn't anyone suitable, implying he would hurt a human female. Yeah, he did have that one scene where he was like, he said something about like, Klingons are very passionate or aggressive or something he said. And Guinan replies with something like, are you sure? Because I know a couple women on the ship who could give you a run for your money, or something she says of like, they're not as tender as you think they are.
I think Worf is all talk, because if he wouldn't even have the nerve to meet those women.
If that was the case. Yeah, I think he's all talk as well, because Kalar was pretty fierce and he was like, so.
See, I think, now, did you list that as a best couple by chance last week or 2 weeks ago?
I did.
See, I actually think it was a great fling, but again, too much butting heads to be a real relationship, though. That was sort of my, again, they had the passion, they had the tension, but she was just like, she was hating her Klingon side too much. And Worf was trying so hard to be Klingon that I think,
they would, well, I see them being, I really like them because they were like, I love them as a couple, and they were really imperfect. Like they had so many issues.
They were very human, right?
They were very human. That's why I like them. They seemed like a real legit couple you could see walking down the street. Like the fact that she had a whole kid and didn't tell him anything, and then sprung it on him as a surprise, and then still didn't tell him.
It's a terrible
made him ask her, "Is that my kid?" Like still wouldn't say it. Like she has terrible communication. Or the fact that she was in love with him and didn't say it, or he wanted to get married and she didn't want to do it. Like they have issues as a couple. Yes. I will agree with that. And that's what makes them, to me, the most human, realistic couple of the couples that I loved. And I think if they worked on their issues, they would be a great couple.
Yes.
That's why I feel like I see longevity, because their relationship seems realistic.
That's an asterisk good couple. They're a terrible couple until they get couples counseling and individual therapy. And then they could be great. Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. They're a couple. Well, they're a couple
of something.
Yes, that could be better. Yes, I will give you that. Wingrace says Vosh would totally kiss Riker while staring at Picard straight in the eyes.
She would.
And Riker would be like, what just happened?
Riker would have been a good couple. I think those two would have been great, because they're both kind of spicy. Riker is a little bit more loosey-goosey than Picard. Picard's very straight-laced and uptight, but like that would have been fun. And she would say something cheeky, and you would see that very sexy smile that Riker has, that kind of grin like spread across his face, and then the curtains flutter. Like that would have been a great match.
I could see them being summer flings for multiple summers.
Yes.
Like I could see them being those kinds of friends with benefits even more than Troy and Riker, where every time they're in the same district, they're like, hey, I'm in town,
I'm here,
or whatever, and they're like, cool. And then they're just like, all right, see you later. And they're both like, done.
Bye.
They're both done with it. I could see them being a very evenly matched couple in their level of investment in the relationship. Like they'd be on the same page of, we come together, we have a good time, and then we go our separate ways and have a good time. I will agree with you there. Wolfkinder3 says, poor Geordi. Agreed. Matt says, I was waiting for Geordi and Aquiel. I was waiting for them on the list. So
you're welcome.
Yes. Randall says, LeVar Burton has mentioned that the writers always had LaForge struggling like that. Like he had no idea. No idea how much he told them during the series. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, because the writers are writing the characters. The actors, after playing these roles for so long, can give feedback to the writers where they're like, I feel like this character would do X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, the actors are being paid for acting. The writers are being paid for writers, and they're not the same person. And even though the actors oftentimes direct the episodes of Star Trek, and so in that case, they do get to touch the writers and the characters and the plot and all of that, there still has to be like this respect between the division of labor, right? So you're not going to tell, like, I mean, I guess I'm sure actors do this, but you're also not going to be like, I want the camera angle at this angle instead of this angle. It's like, that is not like, stay in your lane, you know? So I do know that a lot of actors have a lot of complaints, but
Yeah.
whether or not that's listened to, this whole thing is such a big machine that even
Yeah.
if they have great ideas, we might not get to see their great ideas. And sometimes we do see their great ideas. Wolfkinder3 says, remember an early episode with Q, I think a Klingon woman crawling towards Worf and he hits her. Yes, that was the first Q episode we got with this, I think maybe with the dog planet or whatever,
Yes.
where
Yes.
Q makes like this Klingon woman and she's like growling and walking towards him all sexily and he backhands her and she flies across the bridge. And you're just like, what the F is going on? That's another episode that I would pull out and burn over Manhunt, which I also don't like. But that episode, yeah, that one's definitely a burn
For
that
real.
episode
For real.
the ground. And Jordy asked him, was that your idea of sex? Yeah, I don't remember that part of the conversation, but I do remember the backhand.
I do remember that. Yeah. And Jordy is like, what the hell? Right. So it's I think that's just the rough around the edges, young Worf, right? Yeah, no, thank goodness, because we're not doing any of that, okay?
No.
But
they
like,
kept the aggression with K'Ehleyr and Worf. They kept the like biting each other and growling, but they took away the backhanding and beating them. They took away a lot of that.
Yeah,
stuff, so
which I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, some people are into that. That's fine. Like, as long as it's consensual, you do you, whatever.
Yeah, but that's not like a Star Trek, let's show it on an episode kind of a
no,
thing.
No. Like, there are kids that watch this with their parents at like 7 p.m. It's not,
like
yeah, for sure. As kids, this is what we were watching. Yeah, I think that Worf is what you would think like a college age male thinks of good sex. But then, you know, season 7 Worf is like a 35-year-old or a 40-year-old man thinking what good sex is. It's like a lot more intimate and intuitive and sort of intentional instead of just like sex. You know what I mean? Like almost like what I would picture like a frat boy sort of thinking. You know what I mean? So I think that's why I thought Troy and Worf would work in season 7, but never in season 1, because Troy was too meek and Worf was too aggressive. Yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel very neutral about them as a couple. Like, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I kind of nothing it. And then also by the time we get to season 7, Troy and Riker are just like, will they, won't they, will they, won't they? And after 7 seasons, I'm like, I don't care. So I kind of feel like of Troy's options, I'm just not in love with the Riker option, the Thomas option, the Worf option. I did really love the guy who was the head of that xenophobic little colony or whatever.
Yes, that was such a great fit. I
loved him for her. Yeah, I was like, that's great. But like most of her other options, I'm like, no. Like, I just don't love them for her.
Like, Riker and Troy feel like, to me, it kind of feels like The Bachelor. It's like, we're spending all this time together, and you're still not sure if you want to be with me. If you're not sure if you want to be with me after all this time, you just don't want to be with me. And that's okay. But to sit there and be like, I don't know, I still am processing. No, you're not. It's been 7 years. It's been 7 years. If I'm not your first choice, you're my last choice. You're my nothing choice. You know what I mean? So, and I know that like the characters kind of grew together and all this stuff. And I know what is in one of the movies they got married and stuff. It's like, okay, that's cute. Great. We found, well, like, but like even that was unsatisfying because we had all this, well, they won't, they're married. It's like, we don't care now. And also,
and also like, why? What's the difference?
What we wanted to see was the relationship, not the like, and now we're married, where it's like, okay, thanks. Yeah, the writers kind of really did us dirty on that one. They really did.
Yeah, to Best of Trek, Worst of Trek's point, the love lines, the romances were written very badly in general. That's why I had such a long list of worst couples, and I had a much shorter list of best couples.
I was just about to ask that. Like, was your best couple list like it's these 5 really solid couples and then these 50 terrible pairings?
Yeah, I think it was maybe 10 good couples and then maybe like 30 bad couples, and then I had to pare them both down to 10. But the best couples was like, there was like not that many things to choose from, because I get that at the end of every episode we want to hit the reset button because it's episodic, so we need to restart. That's fine. But you got the episodes where it's like Picard and Nella, where it's like a great relationship and then it ends on like a good note. That's very rare. You usually get something that's like a complete dumpster fire, like Jenna and Data, where you're like, what the heck? I hope this ends. And then it ends and you're like, good. And then they reset. So it's just, I guess it's for drama's sake or something. It's just easier to write a terrible relationship than a relationship that blossoms overnight and it's beautiful and amazing, but for some reason it sadly has to end. It's a lot easier to just write a train wreck. Like there's lots of passion at the beginning or something that attracts them, but for some
A
reason they can't be
major
together.
collapse. Yeah.
Yes, or there's like a mind wipe and now you hook up, but then you get your memories back and now you know not to, they've got, it's just easier, I think, to make it a disaster. That's my guess for why all of these relationships are so disastrous.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Wolfkinder 3 says, that's why the Worf and Troy thing confused me, the whole like backhanding thing, which Andrea, you addressed. And then says like, that's also a good take on that it's the maturity of Worf from season 1 to season 7 that made it much more plausible in season 7 and like completely ridiculous in season 1. Which I'm glad they didn't do that in season 1.
No, that would have been horrible because it would have been like space cheerleader bimbo and big aggressive man that just takes her, right? And it's like, there would have been no gratitude or joy in that. Like there would have been nothing. It would have been great sadness on our part as a viewer.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So on that note, if you're still watching, be sure to subscribe so that way you can check out these videos every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we talk all things Star Trek. I want to thank my special guest, Andrea, for coming. Andrea, where can people find you?
I am on Instagram at andrea.danihel. That's DANIHEL. It's not a lot of sci-fi content, but I skateboard all the time everywhere, and I have a lot of joy in that, and I love to cook and just be silly. So I just sort of dump a bunch of random stuff on there. But you can absolutely, if you guys ever want to reach out, just DM me, and I'm always happy to talk Trek or sci-fi with anyone, because I'm not just obsessed with Trek, but with all science fiction. So I love talking about it all day long.
You can also find her as the co-host of the TNG podcast, a Star Trek show, wherever podcasts are found. And there's a link to both of those places in the description. Thank you so much, Andrea, for coming.
Thank you for having me, Charisse. I was looking forward to this all week. I'm so happy I got to be here. And thank you for having me. And thank you guys for commenting and stuff. These were hilarious. That Ghostwriter one, dying with laughter.
Still currently dying with laughter.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to close it out. Andrea, hang out for 1 second. But with that, I'm going to close it out. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching on the replay. And we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.